welcome to the NRSD Budget Workshop meeting. I think everybody has the agenda. I am not going to impose Senate rules on this assembly, so feel free to get up and chat quietly. Use the bathroom when you need to, and if you're hungry, there's a beautiful breakfast down in the teaching and learning room down the hall, so please, I hope you'll help yourselves. This is something that I think as long as I've been on the school committee, we've done for the past 5 years, and it's just part of the process. It's not the beginning, it's not the end, it's where we are now, and it is helpful for the school committee to hear from all of the schools and various departments to understand what you all see as your needs, and the school committee recognizes that while we have a fiduciary responsibility to the towns we represent, our overarching goal is to ensure that all students can achieve in a safe and caring environment. So I know that Brooke has some introductory remarks as well.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more with you with your comments. I want to start by welcoming everybody on a Saturday morning at just after 8 o'clock. We all came in this morning. Kathy is right, we've done this for the last several years, and certainly every year that I've been here. We follow a similar format, and so those of us that are in this cycle recognize exactly what it is, what we're doing. I also agree with Kathy in terms of this is a snapshot at this point in time. So in essence, what you're getting is where we were sitting as of Thursday afternoon. Okay, so we have an additional set of reductions, for example, that are scheduled for Monday morning. So by the time Monday hits, what you see here will already be reduced some. As we try to get, we're trying to work towards the at least the 4% that our towns are hoping for us to hit. I also want to make a comment too, and I really appreciate Kathy's comments on this. As a school district, our #1 goal is to meet the needs of our children and meet our contractual obligations. So that's where we have to aim. Because I feel that we have good relationships with our towns, it makes sense that when the town administrators say these are the numbers that we're looking for you to hit, we try to work towards that number. A couple of years ago, for example, Lancaster was struggling, and we worked to try to get to the number so that their number was met, and the other two towns kind of fell wherever they fell once we hit the Lancaster number. Same thing holds true. Last year was Bolton, and this year is Bolton. They don't drive our work, but we're certainly sensitive to all of our 3 communities and the limited resources that we have. As a school district, though, we also have, for example, certain drivers, and one of that is our contractual obligations, primarily the teacher obligations. That makes up, our salaries make up about 80% of our total budget. Now, I know that we say this every year, but I think we only do this once a year, so I think it bears repeating every year, and especially when you have a lot of new members sitting around the table. So we want to keep that in the back of our minds. So we really only have discretionary funds as such that we can kind of whittle away at, or what have you, of that 20%. If this 80% is not fitting with the 20% to find to that 4%, then there has to be reductions. You can call them cuts, you can call them efficiencies, you can call them whatever you want, but the bottom line is you need to come down to whatever it is, whatever it takes to get to this number over here. It doesn't drive us, but it's a huge factor, because the other thing is, and I've said this every year too, it makes no sense for the school district to go forward with a budget that our communities are not going to accept. That would just be foolhardy. Mm-hmm. So we always work with that in mind. The other piece is that almost every week, every other week, I always let our town administrators know exactly where we're at, so that everybody's on the same page and everybody knows where we're at. Sometimes Stowe will tease us because that he thinks we've contacted them too often. However, that's what we do, and just so that everybody always knows, has an idea of where we're at. I'm also mindful, though, that I like to make sure, I try very hard to make sure that our school committee knows first before I let the town administrators know, because you are the body that I work for. So with that too, I also want to say we have a couple of other things that drive. When you take a look at, like I sent an email around to you the other day, we have 329 teachers, for example. 160 of those are on the matrix. And that makes a huge difference for us, because it's not just an average 2% increase that we see when we're working through a budget, because it's not a natural 2% that comes out of that matrix. So you have that as a factor, this year's spend is a factor, and there's nothing you can do about that. Again, we have to be in compliance, we have to meet the needs of our children, and so, when we take a look at the request for spend, there's nothing in there that we're going to cut that has been presented to us. This is not a Cadillac model, this is a pure need model. The reason I believe we have a really strong team is because of the people that are in place. It's not because of the number of things that are in place, it's really because of the people that we have. So that's just a broad overarching view. I had mentioned to you the other day at the school committee the number that we're sitting at today as we present this, and how it looks for each of your communities, so that you can see where that is. Our number closely aligns this year. It's not always like this, more with a Bolton number. So if we're saying 6%, their number's about 6%. If we say it's 5, it's about 5, it's 4. So just as an FYI on that. To get started, we are, Mike had asked, and I thought it was a really good question, how do you decide what the agenda looks like? And Lee was just teasing me about sometimes once a teacher, always a teacher. That's my phrasing, not her phrasing, but it's true. So the truth is, if you take a look, we always expect that you'll have the most questions around the elementary, middle, and high school. Not a lot of shifts in that this morning, to be honest with you. And the elementary and middle school principals particularly will talk about the vision that they have as a collective, and then of course they always advocate for their own individual buildings, so you'll hear that. So athletics, we've just done, as I said, a bit of a reschedule, nothing really striking in that particular budget. Sped may take a little bit longer, but after the break, it's for each one of those units, and I just want to remind you things like food services is basically self-sustaining, so there's not a lot there that I expect that you'll have a lot of questions on. Extended day now runs out completely on its own line, so if she needs new stuff, she knows that she can buy those stuff because she's got the funds to do it. And the bodies and the number of children in the program. Nursing, there's nothing really brand new coming out of nursing. So we tend to do the schools in the morning, and then we tend to work with the units after our break in the latter part of the morning. Any questions so far? And if not,
so I just want to give a reminder, and I know I sent out an email relative to this. It's important that we ask questions, but if it's going into more conversation, I'm going to ask that we pull back on the time. If there, at any point, if you feel like you have more questions that need to be answered, then we will invite people to come back and present to us. Or if there's any thing that you have questions or concerns about that we don't cover today, please make a note of them and send them to me, and I will make sure they'll get addressed at the school committee meeting. Mm-hmm. So we'd like to stay on track with this agenda as much as possible. I do think the questions that you all have are important, but just know that I might have to ring the bell and say, next please.
It's a lot to get through.
I know, and I don't want to stifle anyone, the questions they have, but it'll be like an in-the-moment decision. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
So with that, before we bring Tanya up, I do want to acknowledge some additional attendees that we've got here. And you probably know everybody in the room, but you might not. So I want to acknowledge Michele Cody, just kind of do a wave there, and she is the senior budget analyst. She is really Pat's #1 person to go to for all kinds of things. She's the one who prepared the book for you. When we talk about reductions and such, they both come into my office with their computers, and we work together as we work through the finer details in here. Sitting at the very back beside Anne Marie is Vicki Chartier. She's our treasurer and human resources specialist. Beside her is Darcy Wardwell, and she is our payroll and also human resource specialist. I'm also going to have each of our vice principals, our assistant principals, if you could stand, because I'm sure that some of our committee members don't know who you are, and introduce yourselves and your buildings. We would really appreciate that, and why don't we start, let's start at the back. Let's start with Scott. Scott?
Hi, Scott Blanchard, Assistant Principal, Mary Rollinson, Lancaster.
Steve Grant, Assistant Principal at Luther Burbank.
Good morning. I'm Caitlin Anguillo. I'm the Assistant Principal at the Florence Sawyer School.
Mark Levine, the other assistant principal at Florence Sawyer.
Great, thank you so much. Otherwise, I think everybody in the room knows everybody else. So with that, why don't we kick off? And Tanya, let's have you come up and talk to us about athletics.
First of all, thank you guys this morning, and thanks for moving up the agenda so I can get to another event this morning after this. So overall, the athletic department is focused on continuing to maintain a level of competitive programs while trying to still increase participation opportunities among our students. Currently, right now, we offer 50 teams in 30 different sports at the high school level, 6 teams at each middle school level, and numerous intramurals across the district. Currently, the proposed budget will allow the athletic department to continue to have success on and off the field, and we're still encouraging increasing participation in athletics, which are an extension of the classroom, and working with our coaching staff to teach the values of educational athletics. So that's kind of the brief overview and goals, and some of the things I just want to point out. So first, game officials. Each year, these fees are set by the MIA of what we pay our officials in each sport. This year, the officials are getting a 3% increase, which is reflected in the budget. Around police details, we've just moved them from, so we moved them from revolving into the appropriated budget for our football games. And this, I know Brooke mentioned it earlier, but this is because some of our gate receipts this past fall are down and decreased from years past, mainly because of Triple E and having to move all of our games from night games until afternoon games. So in the past, over the last 8 years, our average in fall gate receipts is around 24,000. This past fall, we only brought in 13,000. And like I said, we played only one Friday night game. We were playing on Saturday afternoons, anywhere from noon to 3 o'clock. Not getting as big as crowds playing on the weekend. And then all the field hockey and soccer games that we would play at night were in the afternoon. So we were playing 3:30 starts to get those games in before dark. And unfortunately, that was all due to Triple E and the mosquitoes.
And we're anticipating that same thing this year as well.
And that's, everyone I've talked to said that we're looking at, this is gonna be like for the next few years, like we're gonna be in this kind of situation of not having night events. So that's gonna definitely, it's gonna affect us quite a bit. But we'll make it through. As far as athletic supplies and, the uniform cycle, our uniform cycle, we go through all of our sports and we replace varsity uniforms every 5 years. And this is a rotation since I've started. So for next year, and these are all included in the supply cost for each season, it would be home and away field hockey, home and away boys lacrosse, and wrestling for next year. And like I said, those are included, and this is every 5 years it's replacing, so we can move uniforms down to JV and have new varsity uniforms. And as for equipment, there's no big ticket items this year. Everything is just to have the supplies that we need for the high school and middle schools, so we have the ability to compete and have the equipment we need to run these teams. The only other additional request we have this year is to add a JV golf coach. And so right now, our golf program is a no-cut program, but we only have the varsity level in golf. So over the last 4 years, our numbers have been in the 20s, but your varsity roster is only 12 kids, and only 8 kids compete during a match. So we've got anywhere from 12 to 15 to 18 kids that are just practice players that are not able to compete. So, as I look at this, like I said, over the last 4 years, we've been in the 20s, close to 30. So if we were to add a JV coach, we would allow those kids that are just practice players right now to get more individual instruction time with a coach, because right now the varsity coach focuses most of his time on the top 12 players that are playing in varsity matches. If we add that JV coach, they could have more instruction at the JV level, and they could also compete in matches. Right now they just practice on the putting green and driving range every day and don't get to play as much. And I think this would be great for the golf program. In addition, golf's one of those lifetime sports where, you know, if you get into in high school, you can play for the rest of your life. And I think this would help because we have a lot of kids interested in golf right now, and I feel like we're just not meeting their needs, only having a certain amount, only being able to practice and not compete. So those are the big things in athletics. I said there's no huge ticket items this year. So if you have any questions.
I don't know if you're able to answer these, there may be a quick question. Where is the JV golf coach in the budget?
In salaries.
Oh, it's in salaries,
Yeah.
okay.
And that would be, depending on experience of that coach, would be between like 2,800 and about 3,700. So,
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have, relative to the gate receipts going down, I know that's totally out of your control. And I know that we're looking at expenses for the most part, but in terms of the revolving account for athletics, I don't know if anyone knows how much money is in there, and is there a possibility of using some of that money to offset where the $20,000 for the spring officials is being asked to add into the athletic budget? Is there a way to offset with the revolving fund?
The
Pat
athletic
can explain
revolving,
that, yeah.
Yes.
the athletic revolving fund has been used to also offset some of the debt costs
Yes.
for the track.
Mhm.
And at this point, because of this year and the year before it being down, we've depleted that fund. That account had been built up over many years, and now we don't have a reserve to go to. So that's why we've reduced the costs against that revolving account, starting with this year. And you can see it, it's on the blue pages, which is just behind the yellow pages,
Okay.
the very top of the page.
Yeah.
So you'll see the shift into the regular appropriation for that debt. That debt was originally in the regular appropriation. We shifted it into the revolving
Mhm.
to use up some of those funds that had built up. Now we're seeing it go back, not completely, just a portion of it.
Okay.
This very question you'd asked a couple of years ago, and I think that's why we shifted what we did.
Okay, okay. Other questions for Elaine?
How much fundraising do you get from outside sources like boosters or anywhere else?
so boosters, they do a lot of the equipment fundraising, and they do fundraising, and it's for equipment that we don't provide. So for example, you know, in baseball, you provide baseball, you know, but last year Booster Club bought a new batting cage and supplied that for the team in the program. So they do the big ticket items that wouldn't be a typical thing in the budget for the school.
Okay. Do you have like a ballpark range of what that looks like annually? Or is it sort of on an as-needed basis?
Usually on an as-needed basis, and it also depends on if Boosters is doing, you know, a big-time fundraiser that year or not. You know, they did 2 years ago, they did casino night where they brought in, you know, I think it was $30,000, so they used that $30,000 and gave back to the teams right away with different things.
Okay.
We are planning a reverse raffle for this March, so again, we're not sure how, we're hoping maybe like 10,000, and again, that 10,000 will go right back into, you know,
Yep.
equipment needs.
Okay.
Other questions? Mike?
This is a question for Pat, just going back to the revolving accounts. Was that an elimination of the user fee revolving account? In other words, was the user fee revolving account, is that no longer?
No,
available?
that's still in existence.
Okay,
The athletic revolving account is strictly gate receipts. So, a decision was made back a few years ago that should be tied directly to some of the costs of the turf field.
All set, Mike?
Yep.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tonya. We'll ask our elementary school principals to come forward, please. I want to thank our assistant principals for coming in this morning as well. I think it's really nice to have you here. Thank you.
And Christy Nealon is homesick.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Texted me at like 6:30 this morning and said, stay home, do enough.
So gentlemen, we'll turn it over to you to start.
Thank you. So good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you to present our budgets, request for the 2020-2021 school year. As the first principle on the agenda to present, I'm going to share some commonalities between the 3 elementary building non-salary budget requests. We try to be collaborative and calibrated with each other, but also with the vertical alignment of the middle schools and high school under the umbrella of the district improvement plan. We are continuing to support the refinement of the literacy work that we have done as a cohesive elementary unit over the last few years. This work will grow within our buildings towards similar goals, though the materials and professional development will be individualized towards building needs. A shared focus of this work will be the integration of the new social sciences and history standards into literacy instruction as we move away from a traditional textbook and single source of instruction. All 3 budgets reflect an addition in our general instructional supply lines as our contract with Pearson Publishing matures, and we now have a cost associated with the workbooks for our Envisions program. Each building will also be taking similar yet unique site-based approaches to developing social emotional learning. While there will be standalone opportunities to develop SEL with students, we also see the need to integrate SEL into our academic instruction. Lastly, we're very much aligned in our appreciation and gratitude to central office, towns, and the school committee for the continued support and encouragement of the work that happens with our students every day. Thank you. With regards to center, thank you again for the opportunity to present. Personnel requests. The only personnel request for center is an increase in our ELL teacher position from a 0.8 to a 1.0 FTE. We have an increase in enrollment of ELL students combined with the needs of those students being higher. The result is the request to increase that FTE. We currently share a position with Hale Middle School. With regards to non-salary budget requests, our non-salary budget supports the ongoing work we're doing across all subject areas and supports our school improvement plan as well as the district improvement plan. Staff are working this year to understand content and application of the Castle core competencies with sites on how to work with students through next year with explicit SEL instruction as well as that integration of into content instruction that I mentioned before. This includes this year we have an amazing pilot of some data that we're using with 1 grade level with having teams of our literacy specialists, math specialists, counselors, administrators all in the room with a teacher to review academic and SEL data simultaneously to better understand our students and how to build on strengths and support needs. The request for the book room that has been in there the last few years is reduced as we're nearing completion of a collection that will only require minimal maintenance in future years. I've previously mentioned the addition of the math workbook costs into the site budget, so that is in there as well. I also want to highlight the work we're doing with additional assessments with the support of teaching and learning in order to better provide classroom instruction and an intervention for our students. And we're also seeing some shift in math instruction to sort of complement and mirror what's happening with literacy workshop models as far as structures and instructional methods. We're continuing to expand our makerspace as part of our ever-changing computer lab, and our specialists have done work to trial cross-curricular experiences for students to build a community within a community. So thank you again for the opportunity to continue to provide an excellent learning experience for our students. Our staff and families are grateful for what we're able to do, and I thank you again for allowing me the chance to review our proposed budget and to continue our success into the next school year. Thank you.
One of the things I want to point out too, while the principals are talking, is if you look behind tab 3 to a green sheet, that has new staff requests on it. And I want to just point that sheet out to you because you kind of followed along. One of the things, I think one of the strengths that we have as we work as a team is very often we will make shifts internally where we can. And for example, you'll hear like the ELL, is it ELL that you're looking at sharing with Hale, for example. So you'll see it in here, but know that like we work very hard to try to shift and share things within our buildings, and you'll see that with same thing happened with Mary Rowlandson and Luther Burbank as well. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that particular sheet. That's not where we will land, that particular sheet. That's just where we sit today. But you'll hear, for example, the middle schools will talk about things that they've requested that we've already cut from that particular sheet as well. Thanks, Ross. Any questions for Ross?
Just relative to the ELL teacher?
Sure.
So you're sharing with Hale, so
Correct.
is that a total between Hale and Center? What's the total FTE for ELL?
It's currently at that 1.0.
Right.
Mr. Grady can speak to his position. I believe it's a 0.6 in addition to the share that we have. So I think the total FTE between the two buildings is a 1.6 right now.
Okay.
So what we have at center of that total share is about a 0.8. We need a 1.0.
Okay, and then,
And I believe there's
The other
also
half,
an increase
yeah.
that Kyle can speak to a little bit
Sure.
later. But
okay, thank
yeah.
you, yep.
Essentially what that eliminates is the need to share the position.
No,
for
I
center.
understand, yeah. And I understand the mandates that require
That's exactly right.
the certification, but also the different levels of
Correct.
the students
Yep.
with the ELL needs.
Yeah,
And
we're
it makes it very complicated, especially when you're a district with
Right.
less than 100 kids in ELL.
Right, and if a student moves in, one student who needs services may be a couple times a week minimally, another student may be every single day
Yes.
at the maximum, provision under
Yeah.
regulations, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Leah?
Just really quickly, do you guys all use the book room in all of your schools?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you guys assessed how it went this year? How many teachers are using it?
I was just in our book room a couple days ago, and I think we're also coming off of the holiday, but looking at sort of the number of, just based on our check-in, check-out system, the number of staff that currently have bins or books taken out, and I think it's pretty steady. I mean, I think we could do some more work with that. I think that's gonna come from a little bit more professional development within the building about how to best get into the book room as teams and pick books with upcoming units and things like that, so, yeah, it's developing for sure.
It's a critical component because we've reduced the amount of books that teachers are buying for their individual classrooms. So then they go and they rotate, it's with every unit, it's a set of rotation of bins that come through. So it's not just, like a class set, it's a must-have. So the book rooms are always in constant flux of coming in and out,
Just follow up on what you were saying. I know that it might have been 3 years ago when level literacy K-5 was not consistent across the district. Is it fair to say it is now?
Oh, very much so.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to check. No, I remember that.
In
that-
terms of resources and in terms of instructional practices,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we're grateful for the support
Yeah.
for
Sure.
that
Yeah.
long-term
And we're
literacy
grateful that
project.
it is a consistent program across the district for the students. So thank you for the work you did, your leadership in bringing that
The
forward.
teachers for sure on that have been amazing.
Outstanding.
I think in every, our first professional development at the beginning of the school year, each grade level, when we sat down to, with Tammy Mulligan, our consultant, each one of them said something to the effect of, I can't believe how much my students can do this year coming in versus previous years, so
Excellent.
it's good to hear.
Very good, thank you. Other questions for?
Ross?
Yep.
Mary Rowlandson?
There we go. Good morning. Thanks for allowing us to present today. The site-based budgets provide the foundations and tools for students to learn with. This past year, we've used the budget to support not only the basics for learning, such as paper, pencils, crayons, we've also continued to purchase materials to strengthen and shore up the academic learning and differentiation. Books for the book room, as we just talked about, software, computer programs, such as Book Creator, or Osmo for the iPad are just a few of the ways we've differentiated instruction across all curriculum areas. Through the professional development line in the past year, teachers and MRE staff have attended social emotional learning workshops which support the district learning goals and prepare us for implementing the SEL with students next year. Another part of that line, the professional development line, was also used to purchase the book Onward by Elena Aguilar for teachers engaging in a book study group. This is led by Scott Blanchard, our assistant principal, and we have about 25 teachers who are reading that and discussing that monthly and reflecting on how to build emotional resilience within themselves as well as with students. It's been very successful. In the coming year, there are really no new initiatives or major curriculum updates. The focus of the budget is sustaining curriculum resources. The budget is built to continue to support literacy, adjustments to the social studies curriculum, and digital resources to support all areas of the curriculum. The site-based budget now includes purchasing math workbooks, as Ross spoke about. In terms of staffing, the Mary Rowlandson School and Luther Burbank School are requesting an additional English language teacher to be shared across the two schools. In the past 2 years, 14, maybe 15 as of yesterday, students have enrolled in the Lancaster schools that need EL support. This year, that trend has continued, and we see that continuing in the coming years. In addition to current data, it indicates Lancaster students who require ELL services are under-supported, according to the recommended DESE guidelines. It is in support of these students that we, both present and future, we make that request. In summary, the Mary Rollinson budget is designed to just sustain the learning that's ongoing. Overall, the budget request will continue to support curriculum initiatives and continue to be in that constructivist, open-ended learning that we continue to talk about at Mary Rollinson.
Thank you. Any questions for Sean?
Sean, in the instructional technology line, there are a number of items that have gone from 0 to some number, and I'm wondering if that is part of a broader STEM theme.
It's actually, I think, well, you can speak to it, but
Sure. So
ours looks the same.
Yeah, so a couple of them, like STEM scopes and mystery science software, were district budget purchases, just like the Envisions workbooks, and so it's been shifted into our site-based lines now.
So it's not out of the teaching and learning anymore. We've
Correct.
shifted it to the schools. That's why you see that.
Yep, correct. Yeah, and a couple of things have been added to, like Lego software is something to bring us up to speed with the other schools. They have it in.
Any other questions?
No,
Can I make a comment? Oh, Leah, why don't you go first?
I was just gonna say, so, I'm trying to make sure I look at this correctly. I'm just trying to understand the FTE increase at this particular school.
for the English language teacher.
Yeah.
So we are requesting a 0.6, and Luther Burbank will be a 0.4, so it'll be a shared position, similar to
Center and Hale.
Center and Hale.
Yeah.
And then an engineering teacher?
You'll recall how,
Okay.
That's middle school.
I'll address that in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
There's a cost share though?
It is, and it's basically, you probably
Yep,
can explain a
that's
lot
okay.
better than I can, but that's the Minuteman position, the ex-Minuteman position, which is now coming under our budget lines.
That predates you.
I remember this
Yes,
though,
okay,
so
yeah, yeah.
right now it's still a Minuteman position, this school year?
In
is
this school year, but starting, yes, because we had to give a year's notice.
Got it.
And so we gave the year's notice, and so,
And so we will see that at all of the middle schools?
yes.
And the cost share is to extend the engineering program into the 5th grade as well.
And do you find that the Minuteman contract in the addition to our own personnel is similar? Like, is there any difference between the cost?
Well, right now, the communities are paying for that position, right, through the Minuteman budget when it comes out. And basically what we're doing is saying, well, they're no longer gonna be paying for it, but we will be paying for it. So the communities were paying for that position no matter what
Right.
anyway.
But is there a difference between what we're paying Minuteman and what we're now gonna pay?
I think the question is really, is there a difference between contract between Minuteman and ours? I think that's really the question. And Minuteman, I believe, pays a little bit higher, do they not, than we do?
Just a comment where ELL has come up, just for a future school committee agenda item, to have a presentation on it so folks can understand.
Sure.
Because where we don't have a lot of, we're a low incidence district, and I think any district that has less than 100 or, is that it? Yeah, but it's still governed by the federal mandates for providing ELL instruction, and then it's I'll use the word complex in that there are more stratas to it and has changed dramatically over the last 10 years.
It has.
So that the school committee can understand the program, what the federal requirements are and what our breakdown is in terms of students.
Sure.
So we can do that sometime, yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna add, you're right on that number,
Yeah.
and as our populations continue to grow, we
Right.
will no longer be a low incidence. And if you recall, when I've gone forth with the new accountability system,
Yes,
when you are over 100, you then that goes into your accountability rating. So once we are a higher incidence, we will then be assessed in our accountability with that,
Yes.
which is why we are working to up these kinds of positions so that we're meeting those state mandates.
yes, unfunded mandates.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything for Sean? Great. Joel?
Thank you. So, if you will indulge me, I'll wear both my elementary and middle school principal hats at the same time and just address Florence Sawyer School from a pre-K through 8 perspective in terms of our asks. The first big ask is for an additional school adjustment counselor, social worker. Currently, Florence Sawyer School has 2 counselor interventionists for our student body and 2 counselor, social worker, adjustment counselor for each of our therapeutic programs. We hadn't asked for an additional position prior to this year because we were able to manage and leverage a lot of the work that those counselors in the programs to work with the general education population. We're just seeing now, in addition to the work that we're doing with social emotional learning, with the amount of needs that we're seeing and the high level of need that our students in our therapeutic programs have, it doesn't allow our 2 counselors for the general population to meet all of the needs. So I recognize it's a big ask, but it's our top priority in terms of an ask. In terms of the non-salary requests, my colleagues have both spoken to primarily what we're asking for as well in terms of the support of our technology, ongoing professional development to continue moving our needs forward. With regard to social emotional learning, we started an initiative this year at the middle level, as did Mr. Grady, around executive function and building that capacity with teachers, and that's been a really positive experience for them. Additionally, I want to compliment Mark Levine and Caitlin Angulo for leading a book study for the book Onward as well. For the most part, I don't think you'll see any outliers in the non-salary requests. I did want to point out in all of our budgets that the general instructional supply line items are a little higher than they were, and that's also a function of the teaching and learning department, that centralization of curriculum materials, just sort of moving under the site-based budget for sort of better tracking of the materials that we have. You'll see that in terms of STEM scopes and math materials. And then I can speak to the middle school in general.
Any questions at this point for Joel?
Yeah.
Mike?
Joel, so the 1.0 FTE counselor, is that to buttress the current workload of the 2 counselors at Florence Sawyer, or is that for sort of an emerging therapeutic learning program? Is that program specific, or is it?
No, it's not program specific. If you look at it in terms of caseload, it may seem, well, it does seem entirely skewed, but our therapeutic programs have anywhere from 6 to 8 to 9 kids in each program. So the needs of those programs and their social emotional needs, the counselors have an 8 to 1 ratio, which leaves our other 2 counselors with a ratio of somewhere around 360 to 1. And they do a phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just seeing with the needs in our therapeutic program, they're tied up all the time, so we can't leverage their help with the rest of our students in the way that we used to in the past.
Other questions for Joel? Oh, yes, Leah.
Sorry, I'm seeing that only 2 of the middle schools are asking for a counselor boost.
Well, and I think our middle school principals can speak to that, but I think it's a matter of sort of, figuring out that equity in terms of where we are across all of the schools.
And need.
But,
The equity
right,
need.
right.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen,
Thanks, guys.
appreciate it, and thank you. Yeah, you might as well stay there, Joel. Thank you again to our elementary assistant principals for coming this morning, really appreciate that. Welcome to our middle school principals.
You guys have to click it.
You're gonna have to lift it up and point to the computer.
Is it this?
Yep.
No, this is that. Okay. All right. Good morning. Echoing Principal Mulcairn's remarks, the middle school principals would like to thank Superintendent Clenchy, Assistant Superintendent McGuire, and our school committee for your ongoing support as we continue to extend and build upon the academic, the social emotional, and the extracurricular activities in our 3 district middle schools. Our budget requests represent common themes. In partnership with the Department of Teaching and Learning, our district teachers have been given the time and the space to collaborate together in their ongoing alignment of curriculum and instruction practices. These requests include the extension of the workshop model in middle school English language arts, common science and mathematics resources, the ongoing evolution of our library media spaces, and the exciting opportunity to continue the great work of our engineering program, now fully incorporated, or soon to be fully incorporated in the NRSD budget. As Superintendent Clenchy mentioned, an additional request that we're not moving forward but would like to put on your radar is for mathematics specialists at the middle level. Currently, our elementary schools are staffed with math specialists who work with students and staff for remediation and enrichment. Additionally, they provide support and instructional strategies and innovative approaches to our teachers to the teaching and learning of math. The level of need at the elementary is such that it impacts the limited remaining time that they have to also work with the middle schools. That said, we recognize the necessity of responsible budgeting practices as we work in partnership with our communities toward our shared goals. And as such, we've removed these requests from the FY21 budget, but want to make you aware of it. As you will hear from my colleagues, I think you will also find that while our school-specific requests may differ somewhat, they reflect our ongoing commitment to build toward ensuring common experiences for all of our students. Again, we thank you for your continued support.
So with that, we'll turn it over to Laura. Luther Burbank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel, for presenting our combined middle school request. Done. Thank you.
As everything we do together is a group effort, so thank you.
As Joel indicated, we really are so grateful for the support we receive from the school committee. We really do feel your support, and our staff is grateful, and our students are grateful, and our communities are grateful. Thank you. As my colleagues had mentioned, we see great impact of our FY20 budget, and I know that everyone's super excited to share the impact of the FY20 budget because it really spurs us on with our request for the FY21 budget. So just to highlight some areas that we believe we know we're making steady progress and growth towards our full implementation of technology integration to support student learning and innovation as a result of our one-to-one Chromebook initiative. Implementation, no longer an initiative. We really continue to get positive feedback from staff and students and families through survey results. We also continue to benefit from our instructional technology specialist at Luther Burbank. And we are seeing some great gains with the district collaboration in that position last year, and we look forward to that continued collaboration at the district level next year. As well, we're in full implementation of the workshop model for literacy, both reading and writing, and co-teaching model for mathematics and English language arts. And we believe and we know that these models support and extend students' needs in the inclusive setting. The Luther Burbank FY 20 budget has also supported enrichment and enrichment and extension opportunities for kids. We now have 73% of our students participating in interscholastic, intramural, or an extracurricular activity. And we know that these kinds of opportunities are so critically important for students, and particularly at the middle level. So our request for the FY21 budget really is intended to maintain and sustain this level of growth as we move ahead into the next year. Of note with the FY21 budget, we'd like to point out that you are going to see a decrease or a reflection of a decrease in need for textbooks and print resources, and you'll see that this is reflected in our textbook line item and a reduction in our general office line item as well. With that said, and all of this said, we are requesting an increase in staffing in 2 areas. We are requesting an increase of a .25 literacy specialist at Luther Burbank. Currently, Luther Burbank has a 1.0 literacy specialist, and this position is funded through 2 different sources. It's funded through the district's appropriated budget. .75 currently of the position is funded through the district's appropriated budget, and .25 of the position is funded through Title I grant resources. The position serves 2 purposes. Currently, it serves to provide multisensory instruction for students with IEPs, specifically Orton-Gillingham. That's .75 of the position, currently supported through the district's appropriated budget. And .25 of the position currently supports students identified to receive Title I services for literacy. The increase of a .25 ask would bring this position in terms of equity being supported through the district currently at the other 2 middle schools. Currently, the position is supported as a 1.0 in the other district middle schools, and so the increase in the .25 would bring this position in alignment with the other positions at the other 2 middle schools. As well, regulations relative to Title I require schools to ensure that Title I services are not supplanting services provided through the district's budget, and instead are supplemental to the services being provided through the appropriated budget. As Mr. O'Shea had indicated, we are requesting a shared position for an English language learner teacher. And Mr. O'Shea shared that request so eloquently. In the last 2 years, we continued to enroll new students, both at Mary Wellington and Luther Burbank. We continue to see a trend in this area, and as Mr. O'Shea indicated, we did receive a new student just registered yesterday with English language learner needs. So as we expect this trend to continue to grow, we're asking for support in terms of staffing to support this position. And then finally, we are requesting the support for an addition of 1 extracurricular opportunity in terms of a stipend for our students, and that's specifically Honors Wind Ensemble. Currently, 29% of our student body participates in instrumental music of some kind at Luther Burbank. This year, we've added Honors Wind Ensemble to our extracurricular offerings, and we have 25 students participating in that extracurricular opportunity. We're requesting a stipend to sustain this program in the year ahead. Currently, the program is running without a stipend, and we hope of bringing our numbers even higher, to an even higher degree with our music program and our extracurricular opportunities for our kids at Burbank. So that's it. And overall, we're really so proud of the growth that our students and staff continue to make, and even more so, we're thankful of your support and your continued collaboration with us, and we thank you for your consideration of our requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions of Luther Burbank? I just want to say how much I appreciate the schools all working so closely together. I mean, I see it all the time in this room, but you know, it just emanates from you when you come to the table here. And you know that whether it's that you're working within your communities, you know, like Stone, you know, and I think the Center in Hale, and you guys were actually ahead of me with a piece of news the other night, and I thought, wow, how did you already know this? And well, Ross already called me, you know, and I see the work that you all do, and I'm so appreciative of that. So thank you so much.
Just,
Mike?
real quick, there's, and I apologize if we've gone over this, but there are a couple of line items like, at Luther Burbank, the math specialist, and at Emerson, Sawyer Emerson, the math specialist, salary requested versus superintendent recommendation. Why is there that difference
The
there?
zero, it's you're
I apologize
exactly
if I
right. Joel
missed it.
did go over that. Do you want to just do a quick repeat of what you said?
So, with regard to the math specialist, we had it in at one point in terms of extending that up to scaling that up to the middle level with a separate specialist at each school, and just looked at what we were requesting and decided it's important, but it can wait, but we just want to put it on your radar so that you're aware of it.
Yeah. And you'll recall, Mike, like when we did our first draft budget in December, we were at 10%. Like somehow you have to get down to where you're gonna go, and we had that discussion. I rarely make any reductions without talking to the principals, you know, and so that was the collective decision.
Just I'm sorry. Laura, I don't see the stipend for the honors wind ensemble.
It's in the main document. If you look at the executive summary,
Oh, okay,
there's an
thank you.
increase from last year to this year.
Yep, thank you. Oh, Leah.
Just really quickly, so, to belabor the point, so you all don't believe that you need additional assistance with your counseling department?
Say that again.
I think that you're the only school that is not asking for the counselor, so I'm just trying to understand why two would and one wouldn't. Is it just based on need,
Well,
or what you already have?
We,
yeah, I mean,
I can't remember how many years ago now, we added a social worker between our building to support.
So you have
So we have 4 counselors in total in Lancaster.
which exceeds
my
what
blank
you
face
have.
was in terms of need, I mean, that would be wonderful.
Right.
But in terms of a triage of need and what's critical, that is not our most critical need.
So I guess what I'm asking is, the other two counselor asks are kind of bringing the other 2 towns up to speed with this?
FTE across the district, I think you'd see it, that this would level things out.
Thank you.
And I believe Kyle's gonna speak to the need relative to his program as well.
Anything else for Luther Burbank? Great, thanks. Kyle?
Thanks, Leah, for that nice segue. And, my big ask. So thank you. I'm going to dive right into my first request, and that is for a full-time adjustment counselor, social worker at Hale Middle School. There are 2 reasons for this request that are pretty basic and straightforward. One is caseload management, and the other one is proactive outreach. Right now, Hale has a total of 304 students, and we are currently servicing all of those students with 1 guidance counselor. If our projected enrollment numbers remain the same, we should have around 310 students at Hale next year. There are 5 major components to the guidance counselor position as it pertains to Hale. I'm going to run through those really quickly for you so you get a flavor of what this person does. The first thing is they oversee 504 meetings and the creation and distribution of all 504 plans. They provide help for students who are in crisis or in need of counseling support. They service all C-grid minutes for students on IEPs. C-grid minutes are like counseling services that are written into students' plans. She provides support for students in the Middle Connections program. And she manages cases for students who are returning from outside placements or hospitalizations. A lot there. And if you think about it, all of that is for students who have been identified through 504 IEP processes, hospitalizations. So it's really working on kids that we already know need supports. A second counselor at Hale would help to distribute the caseload for each of these 5 components and create an opportunity for the position to evolve and grow in a way that would better serve our students and families. A second counselor would be able to add a 6th component to the guidance counselor positions, and that would be this idea of proactive outreach. We would be moving away from a model of emergency response and one toward education and prevention. We'd like to proactively build our students' capacity and their skills for managing the bumpy times that they experience in their adolescent years. We've been sampling with this idea already. Currently, our guidance counselor has been pushing into 6th grade classes to teach something that we've been calling guidance class. This has helped our guidance counselor to make connections with students who are not already receiving guidance services. She has been teaching skills like conflict resolution, responsible decision-making, and stress management. Without additional support, however, this model and our idea of having a proactive outreach for students is simply not sustainable. My second request is to increase our ELL teacher from a 0.6 position to a 1.0. Without a full-time ELL teacher, there's a real possibility that Hale will be out of compliance as it pertains to our students who receive ELL services next year. Each year, our student population who receives these services grow. Last year, we went from having 1 student to having 3 students who are considered level 1 ELL. That's 45 minutes a day, every day, that they receive services. So this request is an attempt to get ahead of what appears to be another increase in next year's. The non-salary requests that you see up there are really they're tied to the 2 positions that we're asking for. They're simply there to support office and curriculum materials should we be granted those 2 positions next year.
I just want to spring for just a flavor of the ELL. Last year, I think we were in the 70s, somewhere around there, for a number of students across the school district that are receiving ELL support. This year, we're well over 80. So, and that number just continues to grow, and it certainly has grown in the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're closing in on that 100 mark. Any questions for Kyle?
Go ahead, Leah.
So I'm wondering, you have a new assistant principal that is at 0.6?
0.4.
0.4. So are you finding that that is sufficient? I mean, clearly you haven't asked for it, but I'm wondering if it's sufficient.
I feel like I come here and everybody push me. You need more help?
But we say that in a good way. We say that with affection.
Ideally, I'd like to see you in the classroom,
Right,
right? And
yeah.
not having to manage my kid.
I've been more in the classroom this year than any of my previous years, and I've been able to turf a lot of the sort of disciplinary things that crop up. We don't have a lot of disciplinary issues, but the little stuff that does crop up, we're able to hand off to Patrick. And I think the only bumpy thing that he's encountered is if he's with us for 2 days out of a 5-day week, he might not get to something the day that it happens, but he usually gets to it within 24 to 48 hours, which is sometimes good for middle school kids. They don't need an immediate response always. Sometimes good for them to sit with it and for us to work through it with them at a separate time. I don't right now see the need to increase that position. It might be something that I'd consider down the road. We do have another year in front of us where our population looks to increase, and that might come back at that time. But right now, I think Mr. Perkins is doing an awesome job, and he's really been able to. I've been able to turf a lot of things to him, and I can do that with confidence that he's going to handle it correctly. It's also just selfishly, it's been really great to have a veteran administrator that I can just bounce ideas off of. Like when we're talking about our PD for next year, our building-based PD, I had some ideas, and he really was able to help me sort of sift through what I was thinking and what the school really needs. So although I call Ross all the time, it's nice to have somebody that's right there in the building, on a regular basis just to speak to. So I don't see the need right now for that. I think the need that we have really is this adjustment counselor, and really, the social emotional stuff that Joel spoke about earlier. That's really where we're going, and that's therefore really the request.
So I have
Go ahead.
two quick other questions.
Go right ahead.
One, you're not gonna be sharing your engineering teacher with Center. I think the other school said that it's gonna push down to 5th grade a little bit, but.
Actually, I think Ross can speak to that.
Sure, so at the end of last year, going into the summer, we had brought this issue up at central office between Kyle and I. In the past, that position was shared with Center. They would come down for the 5th grade, but since the enrollment at Hale has increased so much, where they've gone from 4 sections to 5 sections at every grade level, the ability in the 6-day cycle schedule is not there for that person to get down and provide adequate experience for our 5th graders. So over the summer, we added a small part-time position, and that's the person who's currently doing it, semi-retired, John Mollick, who's got experience in that, so yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess that just triggers my next question, and that is, a couple of meetings ago, we had technology teachers present to us. And I think that we unearthed an inequity with the 6th grade.
Yes,
But
yes.
I think it's just an inequity in terms of the, I think the needs are being met, and I think that was really where we landed at the end of all of that discussion. That Kyle, would you not say that that's kind of where we landed at that point in time?
Yeah, so we have something different, we created it started off to address our enrollment numbers, right? So we were facing, 2 years ago, we were facing a situation where we were gonna have 5 sections in every grade level, 6th grade, as well as in our related arts classes. So we repurposed a position to push into a classroom and rather than supporting teachers and supporting students with technology, the person really has their standalone class in the 7th grade. So what a technology teacher might be doing and pushing into an ELA class or pushing into a science class, this person has their own curriculum. It's set up through DESE. It's the Digital Literacy Computer Science Standards, and it's a 7th grade course that all students take. So when we look at it, sort of, what are the skills and needs that students need, technology skills and needs that students need by the time they get out of middle school? I would say we're absolutely meeting that between our plus class, which is like a crash course in how to be successful in middle school, and that's in 6th grade, and then in 7th grade, the Digital Literacy Computer Science class. I'd say we're absolutely hitting all the same skills and benchmarks that are happening in the other 2 middle schools.
And I think Dr. McGuire just wants to make a comment or two about
Yeah,
that.
remembering that what came up a couple meetings ago when those two came to present, and we're very cognizant and aware of that. And so just for example, both of those guys were over at Hale yesterday, planning professional development with teachers over there just at Hale. So just because each one of those used to belong to a building, they are very aware that Hale has that need too, and so we're aware of that as well. So.
And to further that point, when they were over at Hale yesterday, those 2 gentlemen, the G's, they were working with our 7th grade teacher, Mr. Wasserman, to plan the PD. So they're actually going to have this station activity with their staff, and Mr. Wasserman's running one of those stations in concert with Greg and Gary. So.
As I think bottom line is we feel that we've got it covered, so that there is no inequity.
Great.
Other questions, Elaine?
I have a quick comment and then a question. First, I want to thank the middle school principals and the elementary school principals and the administration for prioritizing counselors and social workers and guidance and these types of things, because if we say we want to focus on SEL, then we actually have to provide the people to be able to deliver the services. So thank you for that. And my question is completely unrelated, but it also is sort of for both elementary and middle schools, in that the budget line items for consumables, the instructional materials and things that are shifting from central office to the building, line item budgets, is that something that you will continue at the same level every year? Are we talking about consumables? So we should expect these level numbers sort of annually moving forward?
Yes.
Yes, I would say
I know
yes,
there's some
probably.
mix in there, but okay.
Yeah.
It'll differ somewhat every year, but overarchingly, yes.
Okay.
When Martina Kenyon comes up through teaching and learning, I think she plans to speak to some of the specificity of that as well.
Okay.
And although, some of this stuff, it also might change in like what the resource that we use. I know we're in discussion right now, even with our math, like whether we're going to continue to use one resource or we're going to look at other resources.
Okay.
I would say in the future, we will remain in our site-based budgets.
Okay.
Other questions for Kyle? I have a couple questions, Kyle.
Sure.
Under, I think it's under general office supplies, there are requests for field trip supplies. I don't think I've ever seen that before, for the Washington trip and Hanover Theater for 6th and 7th grade.
First of all, the 8th grade field trip supplies, that was reduced down to 500, so it's not 1,500. A lot of that has to do with, we're trying to reduce the cost for parents for these field trips. It's also, for the 8th grade field trip, we try to stock the buses with waters and snacks for kids. Otherwise, we found that kids will bring like a gigantic thing of Skittles.
They
And
do,
we've got
yes.
somebody gets sick on the bus. So
Yes.
we've tried to say, we'll
A
stop
candy
this.
and a weapon,
Yes,
so.
right.
Does double duty.
And sometimes there's also just like in order to reserve a location or to reserve a speaker,
I
we
see.
need to be able to have money to put
Sure.
down on it that we don't have when we haven't collected funds from parents.
Yep.
I'm not certain that we'll use that entire $1,500, but we have needed to go to different accounts in the past to try to find funds to support that.
Sure, I just had never seen it before. And then I'm looking down at general instructional supplies, and is it correct to assume that the increase in engineering, ELA, and Algebra 1 materials is a shift from teaching and learning to building based?
That's exactly what we were just referencing, yes. That's all what it is.
Okay.
Engineering's a shift from incorporating it
From
under the
Minuteman.
NRSD budget from the
Yes,
assessments.
yeah, but it's just a trade-off, yeah. So, any other questions? Oh, yes, Leah.
The tablets for coding, are the Chromebooks not sufficient for that?
So we're looking at trying to create a coding lab in our 7th grade, and we were given funds by the PTO for something called microbits, and they just code better when you're using tablets. The PTO has not promised funds for tablets, but they're actively trying to raise money this year. They're no fund fundraiser, as they call it. It's just straight donations that they ask for. We're going to try to use some of that funds, but the tablets themselves are about $380. And they would live in that 7th grade, the coding lab, where students would be able to program these microbits to do a bunch of different types of functions. Some of them have like pneumatic arms and things like that. We found that the tablets, those tablets work better with these microbits and would reside in the lab.
Any other questions? I just want to make a comment, and that's to thank you and the elementary school principals so far for these presentations. I know you're coming to explain your budget, but you're also giving us insight into your programs, specific needs, but other things that I know 5 years ago were of a concern, and that was the lack of consistency across the district. And I know how hard you've all worked in your collaboration with each other and with teaching and learning to make sure that there was parity across the district, and that kids have the same opportunities. And it really is nice to see a group of administrators who work so closely together and collaborate. It's not always the case, so it's so nice to see that in this district. So again, thank you for your work. Thank you for how much you care about our kids and their families, and for taking the time to put together such wonderful presentations for us. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Steve Cullinane.
So, as Steve is making his way to the table, I also want to recognize and thank Kevin Keaveney for coming out early this morning. Again, Saturday morning, bright and early, 8 o'clock. Thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate that, Kevin. We want to thank Steve for coming in. We said to him, you can kind of lay some things out, but we're here to help you, we're here to support you, and keep in mind that he feels like he's only been on the job for like 4 days, so we won't be too terribly harsh on him. I'm going to say too, probably some of the finer details, if you've got any questions on some of the finer details of the high school, probably Pat would be the better person to ask if that comes up, because she actually went and sat with, she and Michelle both went to sit with each one of the department chairs over there. So if there were any changes on the specific departments, that really was Pat and Michelle this year. Steve is going to talk about a couple of things on the slide, just to give you a flavor of the work that's happening right now in the high school. And then I think collectively, we're going to talk about the Dean of Students, although it's not written on here, but we want to just have that discussion and just put it on your radar, that's all. So Steve, we'll turn it over to you to talk briefly about this.
We've just started the MSBA stuff with the building project, so that's kind of all-encompassing at this point. Dr. McGuire's been over and worked with Jake Foster, so that's pretty exciting. Everybody's pretty excited about it, so we're trying to move forward with that. Our biggest asks are mostly in PD and supplies. Our guidance department has a relatively larger professional development ask based on them trying to go through they're working on a trauma-sensitive school basis for SEL, where they'll be able to work more therapeutically with students that are having any kind of mental health illnesses, things like that. They need the training on how to do that, and that's why that's a little bit more expensive than it has been. In English, they're working on a literacy workshop. They started last year. This is the second portion of it. That's why that's costly.
And I'll just speak to that half a minute too. That's Kim Early's work, and we've had that discussion around the table, and how this is, the high school work is all tying into the middle school and the elementary now, that whole vertical alignment. And so that's really, this is her year 2. It's Kate Roberts, right? I think that she's working with.
She comes in and she's really good, but
yes.
she's
fantastic.
Kind of expensive too.
Yeah,
so
yeah. But she is fantastic. Yeah. There's no two ways about it. So it all ties in to the district at large.
And PE wellness is asked a little bit more because some of the ovens in the consumer science program have kind of have long legs. They're not working very well, so it's become a safety issue to some extent. So what we try to do is we're trying to replace some of these things on a more annual basis so that we can keep ahead of what's going on.
I want to go back up to the MSBA work too with Jake Foster. So that's been, to your point, that's been pretty extensive over the last couple of days, and sort of probably a couple of weeks too, now that I'm thinking of it. And so he's been meeting with your department chairs, for example. I think he met yesterday with them, or 2 days I think he's met with them.
Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah. And he's been meeting with a team from the high school around this table here a couple of times. So, and this is all, remember that we have to have an education plan that's developed for MSBA. So this is a good solid part of that work as they move us out, to move us through the eligibility period, aiming towards that feasibility study. So there's lots of good work that has to be done there, and I think you all are doing fantastic with that.
Yeah, well, I want to also applaud Tanya and Steve for being a part of that team. You know, for stepping up and being a part with Jake, and Jake too has been immersed at the high school. He's been invited by teachers to come to their presentations. He's taken time out of his day in classrooms to do that, to really get a strong flavor of the feel and the climate of the high school, and developing that kind of work. So, and Steve and Tanya have been right along there with him, as well as Martina, Kim Early, Mary Murata as well. So that work is really forward moving. Right now we're really excited about it. So.
One of the things that's not on here, but Steve and I have had many discussions on this, is the whole notion of the Dean of Students. And this goes back to a school committee before this committee that's sitting here. I think, Kathy, certainly you were there. I don't know if Elaine, Steve, you may have been there. And this was a couple of years ago. We put in the acting, or another assistant principal into that building, because we really felt strongly then, and I still do, that there needs to be 3 bodies, as well as the high school principal. And a big part of that continues to be the evaluation, and you and I had this discussion again. We just can't seem to do it with just 2 bodies in there and the principal, with everything that needs to happen at that high school. So this year, when we moved Steve in, Steve had approached me because we didn't fill that assistant principal position last year. We didn't take it off the books, we just didn't fill it, right? So when Brian Cody came over here, we just kind of left it empty. But I think, Steve had come forward and he said, we really need help in a couple of areas. Maybe not an assistant principal, but maybe what we do is have a dean of students. And at that point in time, they had a flavor of, and again, they'd all talked about this at the administrative level. Who might that be? What would that look like? And they were looking for somebody that had really good rapport with kids, who had good connections with families, that kind of thing, who had a really positive outlook. positive approach to everything they did. And so at that point in time, they moved Jamie Tucker's name forward, who's currently our football coach, and who's phenomenal. He's just a great man. His dad, you'll recall, Ken Tucker, just an icon in our district. And his mom actually was Alita before Alita was here. So, I mean, it was a family, a family thing for them. Just such a great commitment to Neshoba Regional School District. So it made sense that that might be a really good thing for us to do. So Steve and I talked about it again the other day, and he said, what do you envision for this school for next year? And I said, I'm still sitting at a principal and a group of 3 administrators to make up. Now, Tanya is also heavily involved in all of this, but she has her own world to do. But whenever if there's a major discipline issue or something like that, Tanya's always in the thick of that team's work as well. But she can't do some of the things that we need that third body to do. So I said to Steve, I want to put this forward on the table again today, but I said, I'll have you speak to it. But the truth is, I would love to see that Dean of Students role remain on. I think we would open it up to do a general posting, and if we decide that we're going to move forward with it. But the truth is, right now, the money is sitting in the budget for that position, so it's not quite as expensive as an assistant principal is, but it's not quite as cheap as a teacher. It's kind of somewhere in between. Steve, maybe speak your convictions of what your thoughts are of why we should or shouldn't do this.
Well, the hardest thing when we did get rid of the third assistant principal was trying to keep up with the evaluations. Getting in with 90 plus teachers up there that we had to evaluate, and there were just 3 of us doing those, so it was very difficult, especially when we had discipline issues. If we had a discipline issue, something came up, we couldn't get in the classrooms very much. We're really having a hard time getting in the classrooms right now based on that. We're short of people. With the Dean of Students, they can kind of take the discipline stuff over, so to speak, and give the assistant principals a little bit more time to actually be in a classroom and work with the teachers more. And what they also do is they work with the students, and they can be kind of the liaison between the students, the teachers, and the guidance department. If they see students that are having some issues, having some problems, they'll go to the guidance department and try to figure out and see what's going on. So essentially the Dean of Students is really in touch with what the students are doing, where the students are at, and they do interact with the teachers as well. For the most part, it gives the assistant principals time to do the assistant principal job instead of just being. We're more Dean of Students at this point than we are assistant principals, because we're not able to get into the rooms and whatnot. So.
And I think we see the Dean of Students role as being a proactive role as much as a reactive role. So, but to your point, I think we see it more as the pulse of the students. We just want to put that forward and say that this is our thinking right now. That's something that we'd probably really like to keep. So
Jamie's actually going to go with a couple of guidance counselors to a SEL type thing at Assumption, because he's a wellness teacher, but he also has a guidance background, and both of those things are great as a student. So you can get his interactions are awesome with the kids and the teachers. So.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions?
This is more a question for Superintendent Funchi. So you said that the money for that position is available, but not.
It's not in here right now. And one of the things, thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that you need to keep in mind too is when we do that particular sheet with the asks, I'm just going to bring it up here quickly. We have to put an amount in there because we know that that's probably what that position is going to cost. But there are times, and even as we look at it, like next week, we've already got some ideas of, are there some efficiencies that we can do, for example, with redeployment, for example, of people, of current personnel, and you can kind of work it in. So even though it might look like it's a $645,000 request, it really isn't. Because there are some cases, now some of these, if the new positions go through, like the counselors, that will be exactly what you see, because that's brand spanking new. But other things like this may come as a result of efficiency, for example, through natural attrition, because somebody isn't going to come back or whatever. And so that line is kind of sitting in there and could be just jostled to do that. So that's why I'm saying, you know, we know that the money is in there right now, currently as it sits, because we know of other things that are coming up that we're not able to put here yet, because it's too soon.
So does the money exist in terms of staffing?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. So it would literally almost be a redeployment of a position where, you know, you might, for example, and this isn't really the case, but if you had a retirement and said, you know what,
Yeah.
we can just move this over here. We don't need this position anymore, but we really need this Dean of Students position. We know that the funds are in there for this position right now.
Mary?
Are you putting a number on that Dean of Students position, just a ballpark, or?
Well, the
do you have some
general
idea?
ballpark, again, to be honest with you, when we talk about teachers, we use a ballpark of like maybe 70 to 80,000 plus benefits type thing, and that's kind of a general average of the type of number that we would use. This wouldn't be an assistant principal salary.
So, we are calling this position, as Jamie has it, Dean of Students. But we do not have a position in our list of positions that we have called Dean of Students, is that correct?
Not right now in terms of the general.
Stay with me.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, we would be creating a new position.
You know, yes, I guess, yes, in
Okay.
terms of.
Stay with me.
Job description.
So there is a policy that says that the school committee has to approve new
Yeah.
job descriptions. And part of that, related to that, is a policy that says that the school committee sets the salary range. So what we have done previously is to have you bring forward a job
Personnel.
description, but then also we have your office get comparable salaries. So we look at schools that are comparable to ours in terms of size, look at look at Dean of Students, which is different than assistant principal, and see what is offered, and we get a range. So that's how we have conducted this process
And I'm
in the
looking
last
at
several
Anne-Marie,
years.
yeah, Anne-Marie is saying.
She's
yeah,
trying to
we'll
hide
make
back there,
sure
but I
that-
can see
No.
you.
We'll pull the comps and we'll
Okay.
we'll get a job description ready.
The other question I have, and this is for Anne-Marie perhaps, is there a special certification one needs to have to be a student, a Dean of Students?
There's not a specific Dean of Students certification.
Okay, so so a Dean of Students would not have supervisory, in terms of evaluation of students?
Correct.
Okay, so, I hesitate to say this, but you know me, I wanna say it anyway. Is it possible that it could be someone from Unit A that could maintain their Unit A status, or is that not what
Well,
we?
that would be dependent on how you structure the position, whether you structure
Okay.
it as unit A
But it's a
position or-
possibility.
And then, and when there's no DESI certification for a particular job, then the district has the ability to decide which certification is appropriate. And the teacher.
That's all, yeah.
So I would bring this forward for
you.
further reflection then with the personnel subcommittee
sure.
at our next meeting.
Yep.
And we can talk with the information that she can pull together.
My question?
Yeah, so we talked about Mr. Tucker moving into an administrative position at the high school. Is he coming from wellness and PE?
Don't look at that position, that's a completely different position that he's asking for up here.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, so Mr. Tucker has moved into an administrative
He's
role.
moved into a different position.
From where?
Yeah, from the PE.
So does that mean we have a vacancy in the wellness PE?
We have somebody covering it right now, yeah.
We have a long-term
There's somebody
sub
that's in there.
Okay, and so how would we square that at the high school so that that position is going to be a permanent position so that that vacancy isn't continuing to exist? Does that make sense? So we've got a long-term sub in there, but next year the position, perhaps Mr. Tucker will fill that role. That position will have to be filled permanently, correct?
Depending on the numbers, I don't know what the number, we would leave that to Steve to see what the numbers are like. Because remember, we have to work out with whatever the student numbers are. That's a position For example, and I'm not saying that this is a case by any stretch, but if it was a position that we didn't have to backfill, then we wouldn't necessarily backfill it. It just depends on the sheer logistics of numbers and the need for that department, whatever department it is.
Other questions for, yeah, Leah?
This is maybe a silly question, but for the ovens, I'm sorry, I cannot find them, how much they cost.
It's about $500 for the ovens.
Oh,
500,
okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking,
Yeah,
is this
they're not-
something that we can remove, bring to a potential different building or space?
Yeah, the two ovens are not working. They've become fire hazards, so they're not even using them anymore. Yeah, they've been there longer than I have, so that's a long time.
No, that's an exaggeration.
Okay.
No, that was one of the areas that was renovated in 2003.
Oh, that's true, that's
So
true,
they're only
that's true.
17 years old.
That's true. All right.
We know ovens last long enough.
Mine doesn't.
My other question,
10 years.
my other question for you guys is, we're talking about, well, I don't see anywhere in here the department, like teaching and learning positions that you were talking about a while back.
Oh, no, that'll come,
That's coming up with the teaching and learning presentation.
Yeah, it doesn't
You'll
have
see
anything
why
to do
it's
with
not
it.
on that app, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Elaine.
Quick question, does Challenge Day fall under your budget?
It does, yes.
Yes, so what is that looking like for next year? Because we've talked about expanding it, we've talked about how wonderful it is. And
It's really good. It's coming up in April. We've got 3 days in April to do that. We're still looking at how we had some extra funds that we were able to put towards it this year. I have to get back to you on how we're funding it for next year. I'm not exactly positive, but it should be smaller next year. It shouldn't cost as much because the class is smaller. The sophomore class will be smaller next year. So instead of having to have 3 days, we'll only have to have 2 days, which is substantially less money. So
seems like it's a really good bang for your buck
it's
type
really
program.
it is awesome. It's really good stuff. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, question.
Joseph.
I know you keep looking at the clock. but
No, I'm not looking at the
curiosity's got
clock.
the better of
Just
me.
looking at you. I'm looking at you.
I was wondering if the principal could speak to school resource officer. It says here in the budget that it's per the I see the BPD, so the Bolton Police Department contract. Could you speak a little bit about what that is exactly?
Actually, that might be more of a Pat question, to be honest with you, Joe. What exactly are you looking for?
Well, it says per Bolton Police Department contract. What are we talking about? We're talking about a contract between the district and the police department? Or is that per the union agreement with the collective bargaining agreement with the Bolton Police Department?
Yes, it would be whatever the amount that they're obligated to pay the police officer.
Okay.
We pay that.
So we reimburse the town for that salary?
Yes, they bill us for that.
Okay. And is that a full-time position for the police officer, Joe?
I'm not sure, I mean, are you asking if it's full-time during our school year?
No, I'm just
or-
curious if that's a full-time salary position for the police officer. This is what the police officer does, full-time for the Bolton Police Department, or is this only part of what his or her obligations are to the town of Bolton?
In essence, she works with us every day throughout the school year, and then when school gets out, she goes like onto the regular beat.
Okay.
And we don't pay for that
No.
part of her salary. Okay.
Right. We only pay for the time that she's in our school.
And so we have no discretion on that. We have to pay what the town of Bolton tells us we have to pay for that.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Right. We have to pay.
How many hours a week, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
No, go ahead.
How many hours a week on average is the school resource officer dedicating to the district?
Well, she's got an office right there in the high school, right at the top of the ramp. If you go left, her office is right there. She's there basically every day.
Yeah, she's there 6.5 hours per day.
And do we have any discretion as to how many hours the resource officer works, or is it? And let's say, if we reduce the number of hours, would that in fact reduce the salary requirement?
Yeah, I would think that probably, yes, it would.
We'd have to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
okay.
first reaction is yes, it probably would.
Okay.
We pay for 8 hours, so, I'm looking at information here. And it's based on an hourly rate with benefits to cover, and they bill us
So
accordingly.
my final question is does the district feel that we need a resource officer on site 8 hours a day?
That's an interesting question. I don't think we've ever talked about that, to be honest with you. Not in my time, anyway. Maybe
Okay.
you talked about it before, but that's something we can put in
I
our
don't
discussion.
belabor it, it's just
No,
curious.
you don't have to belabor it now. You can belabor it at a school committee meeting when we put it on the agenda. How's
Okay,
that?
thank you.
All right, put that on the list. Yes, Leah.
I just want to follow
up on what Mike was asking earlier, and that is, let's assume, so first of all, let me say that I'm all in for the Dean of Students. Anything that gets people into class, that gets assistant principals into classrooms, helping teachers, which help kids, is exactly what I'm all on board for. But if that dean is, let's throw it out, $60,000 a year, where is that in the budget? You say it's in here, but.
It wouldn't be in these sheets, it's in the bigger salary sheet, like in your executive summary,
Because it's already there.
because it's already there.
But you know, you look at attrition, it may be a wash, like if somebody retires.
That's what we're expecting it to
and
be a
they're
wash.
making $80,000 and you hire somebody that makes 60, you got your 20,000 ahead.
But
so
if
to
somebody
speak.
retires,
Yes.
that means you're eliminating a position.
But you have to do the numbers to see if you, what you need. So
So
it's
it's because of the salary scale?
No, it's because of looking at the FTEs you need
Just
to
enrollment.
staff your high school. And there may be some movement, so it's,
Our enrollment is going down, so, I mean, we still have, like, as hard as we've tried, and I know, again, not this school committee, but in the school committee past, have asked to take a look at any class sizes less than 10. And we've worked really hard with it, but quite frankly, like, we've still got a class that I know of that we're running four students. That's not sustainable, that is not sustainable, so that's what I'm saying. We need to look at the enrollment numbers, and Steve and I have been doing that over the last week, taking a look and saying, where does it make sense that there could be some natural attrition?
other questions? Look at this, we're only a minute behind schedule. Okay, Steve, you go. Joan, where are you? Get up here. Steve, thank you so much, and thank you, Steve, for all you're doing at the high school.
Thank you to our principals, really
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank
Thank you to our assistant principals.
Good morning, thank you for joining us.
Having me again. I'm back. So the 240 grant, just an overview, this past year, we had a reduction in that grant of about $24,000. Last year, Pat and I worked really closely together to take the majority of the salaries out of that grant, and we can get reimbursement for transportation, so we thought it really behooved us to put the special ed transportation in district and out of district in that line, because when we have salaries in that line, we pay into Mass Regional Worcester retirement, so we felt like it was better to make a shift, put the salaries in the regular budget and reimburse for transportation, so it was, more cost effective, and that's something that we were allowed to do. So we're gonna continue to do that next year. There is one small salary piece that's in there now, and that's the additional administrative assistant in my office that's working. It's I think 0.4 of her position is coming out of that 240 grant, but the rest is transportation. And that seems to have worked really well for us. And then the next is there's an increased request on the out-of-district tuition line. Just to make you aware, we've had several students move in, very high costs, so you can see there's quite a bit of increase there in that line.
Can I just speak to that line just half a minute, and I know that there's a couple of notes over there to the side, but this is the line that is offset by circuit breaker money. And so just again, we only do this once a year, so you kind of put everything out there to explain. So circuit breaker money, and I know that Pat will correct me if I make a mistake, you generally look at a foundation number, so let's say the out-of-district placement is 200,000, just for the sake of an explanation. And the circuit breaker will say like that first 45,000 the district has to pay. Like that's your responsibility. But anything above that, 45,000 to 200,000, we will give you a portion of that money back. And that is what the circuit breaker money is. Now, in the worst years, I think it was like at 41 or 42% when I think back to 2008 and such. But right now, it's generally sitting around that 70, 72, 73, as high as 75. So, we're never sure. The other thing to know is that it's always 1 year behind, because it's kind of like you spend the money and then they come back and do the reimbursement. So if you hear us talk about circuit breaker, That's the line that it's linked to. The other thing is, I was mentioning to some of you before we went on air that I was meeting yesterday with about 10 other superintendents, and they were all saying that they are feeling the exact same thing with the out-of-district placements right now. The numbers are just shooting through the roof right now.
And
there's
the
nothing-
cost of
yeah.
placement, so a lot of they have gone to higher OSD rates, and so when they apply for higher rates, some of the increases in out-of-district placements have gone up $30,000 per placement. So I just want to make you aware that that's the reason for that increase.
So
Go ahead, Mary.
would you give us an idea of some of the individual student, what could a student cost? Like off the top of your head, some of the top, what could one student?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. I would say collaborative-based placements are about between $55,000 and $60,000 per year, depending on which collaborative that you use. If it's a private day school, it could be between $75,000 and $95,000. If it's a residential placement, I would say it could be anywhere from $225,000 to $375,000.
I've seen them as high as $450,000.
And we have some students who are in each of those.
Yeah, I described to you the range of the students that we
Yes,
have
yeah.
in each of those brackets.
Thank you.
That's
So, as a matter of process, how do we evaluate whether an out-of-district placement is appropriate or not? I mean, that's obviously a major expense.
Mhm.
So, what does that look like on kind of a process or an administrative level?
So, a team makes a decision based on individual students' needs. I would say that we do a very good job in district in terms of we have comprehensive programming, but there are always going to be students that have higher level needs that we're not going to be able to service in the district.
So, Mike, it's no different than a team that's doing an IEP. It's that same process, that exact same process.
So I guess what I'm thinking is how do we manage the unpredictability of students moving in whose needs cannot be met by the district, and then the district is obligated to bear the burden of that cost minus the circuit breaker when that kicks in. So how do we project, especially since the circuit breaker is a year behind?
So, you know what, I'm very careful and very thoughtful about that process, but the law says if a student moves in after April 1st, we don't pay until the following year. So I projected this year, so students had moved in that we didn't have to pay for this school year, but it helps us plan for the following school year. So there are some regulations, but there are times that we get assignments that students might already be in an out-of-district placement, and we may be then assigned fiscally. So it's a moving target. I watch it every week, every month, every day. We're talking about it all the time. But at the same time, some students come back to districts, some students move to other districts, some students move in, and so
there's no real predictability. That's really what
it's very
that's
variable.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
So I apologize if I'm digressing, but do we have some sort of connected revolving account where that kicks in the event that there are these unexpected expenses?
So if we go over our unexpected expenses, there's something called extraordinary relief with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, so we can apply for extraordinary relief if we go beyond the out-of-district tuition that we've budgeted. We can apply for that.
I don't think we have applied for that, though.
We haven't.
In my time here, we haven't.
No, we haven't.
That doesn't mean, though, that we won't have to apply for it this year. No, there's no predicting it at all.
This is a public document, right?
Yes.
Okay, so right here you have, we have 5 children who are at the heart of this tuition. Their request is, I think, my eyes don't fail me, almost $1.9 million for 5 children. Then we get 75% of that back from the circuit breaker, or this is after circuit breaker relief?
No, this is what we're projecting. This is what the actual physical cost is going to be to the district.
This is the net cost.
That's net.
The net of the circuit breaker. So the circuit breaker
25% of the actual?
is based on the prior year.
Yeah.
Like our circuit breaker had gone down a little bit because we had brought we had brought kids back in.
Right.
And now it's going the other way.
And so this is what you're projecting the towns will have to pay
Yes, this,
for these
well,
5 children?
this is what Joan is telling me right now. This is what, it's where we are at this point in time.
I just wanna make a comment that Neshoba is not alone in this. This is a dilemma, and wanting to be able to service students with special needs for every district. A family could move in, and that family happens to have, 3 or 4 children with special needs, and they move into a district, and everything changes. So this is a variable and of a very special population. And we know with medical advancements, thank goodness, there are so many children who are able to be with us who might not have been. And on the other side of that, there are costs involved. So this is something that every district struggles with.
Thanks, Joan. Continue.
So I have some staffing requests for next year, as you can see. I think the .5 school psychologist is probably not a surprise based on my presentation of the school committee last week and the amount of testing that we have 5 school psychologists currently. We tested about 370 students last year. In addition to their testing responsibilities, they also chair team meetings. So we have timelines associated with testing, and I think to decrease their caseload to meet the 30-day timeline, it would be helpful to have a school psychologist part-time to help with testing, because when you have that many evaluations open, plus we're trying to have team meetings, plus they're, finishing up IEPs, there's a lot of responsibilities, and we're kind of really pushing the limit in terms of getting that work done even this year with the number of evals that are open. So I spoke to that, I think, at the school committee a little bit. That was one of the things you asked about, the big pieces of the job. I think that would decrease some of the demands of those positions. The .4 BCBA request for Florence Sawyer School is we have our social emotional programs here, Early Rise and Rise. There are 2 BCBAs that are coming to support that program.
Can you explain BCBA?
Sure. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's that acronym thing. It's a board certified behavior analyst. They are behaviorists. They do observation. They write positive behavioral support plans for students. They observe in classrooms. They take data. So we look for trends in data, and then we target behavior to try to support students and reducing some of those kind of high incidences that occur. So it could be blurting, for instance, or interrupting a class. We might target that behavior and really work on, what's the motivator? Is it attention or escape? What can we do to reinforce a student for positive behavior during that time? So right now, 2 of our BCBAs, one from Stowe and one from Lancaster, each spend time here in Bolton, but we're really feeling like it's very stretched and it's not cohesive enough for those programs. And obviously, as we provide more services to students in district, we really feel like having someone here at Sawyer 2 full days a week will better support those programs in terms of consulting and meeting on a consistent basis and servicing those students. Other questions about that? I'll just keep going. The .5 special ed teacher at the high school. This is really, as students are coming into our high school, there's a population of students that really need direct reading services. We have some students with some high reading needs, so we would like to have a teacher who has experience with multisensory reading, Orton, Gillingham, and Wilson. I think I mentioned that last week. And we would like to have some more intensive supports on reading based on the population that's coming into the high school next year. And then the special ed teacher at Hale, I think I spoke last week to, our numbers have increased, and I haven't really talked about where. So Hale has had a lot of students move in with a lot of needs. So our special ed teachers are providing some reading services, some written language services, academic support, and math services, and they are stretched to the limit. And we're hoping to design this position so that we could have our special ed teachers focus on English and math, English and social studies, and have this teacher focus on some of the science support and the math support, and we feel like that would better serve our students. So those are the requests for staffing in my department.
Leah?
That special ed teacher at Hale would be on the co-teaching model as well?
I don't think so. I think that our special ed teachers, they're doing co-teaching and pull-out, and I think that because we're trying to do less restrictive and support, it's just stretched those 3 teachers much too thin with the number of kids that have moved in and need that level of support.
Okay, and then the reading teacher that you were talking about, I think another school mentioned needing a reading teacher. Would that be a shared position or 2 part-time positions?
It wouldn't be a shared position. No.
Sorry, you said kids are moving in to the district at the middle school level as opposed to moving up from, like they moved in?
Yeah,
elementary, then
moving. We have a larger population of special ed students at Hale than we've had in the past.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah. Are the staffing requests in here? In our book?
Yes, look behind tab 3, it's the green sheet, Mike, right there. And go down to about 2/3 of the way and you'll see Jones.
Thank you.
So pre-K, I just wanted to review a little bit about the grants. We remodeled the pre-K. This is year 2 of the remodel. It's been very successful. We haven't asked for an increase of pre-K because we're managing the numbers that we have right now, so I'm really pleased about that. The model seems to be going really well. I just wanted to review some of the grants that come in through for pre-K. The 298 grant is a professional development grant. There's $10,000 there that we have to provide professional development for our early childhood teachers. Our 262 grant, which will also continue next year, is almost $20,000. We use that to support para salaries. Our 237 grant is the community partnership grant. So Liz Garaffi she does 2 things. She works on this grant and she also serves as the preschool team chair. So she's really our conduit to the community. So we have play groups that she oversees in district. She does community play groups at the library, and then the other half of her position is team chair for preschool. So we'll be reapplying for that grant this year.
And that grant is specific to that type of programming.
Right, for preschool. And this year is the last year for the 391 grant, which has supported part of a teacher's salary in preschool, and they have eliminated that grant. So I talked about that last year, but I know some of you probably weren't here. And I just wanted to make that as a reminder. So we have put that money into the regular budget in that area.
Mary?
Quick question, 298, 262, 237, are these grants entitlement or competitive grants?
No, they're entitlement.
Okay.
Elaine?
I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So the salaries line items look like they've gone down. Is that because some of this is being supported by grants, or are we losing a team? Like, what's going on with the salaries for pre-K?
Sometimes it can just even be a different staffing configurations if you're hiring somebody. Like, for example, somebody retires and you're bringing somebody new in.
That actually happened this year.
And that's probably why she's seeing it.
Okay. I just know there's not that many teachers, so I didn't think that.
Right. But that happened, that we hired a new teacher this year in pre-K.
Okay, and so the 391 that's being eliminated, that would be an increase in revenue, an increase in expenditure in this budget, but still the salaries are going down, so that means they're dropping way down and then they're getting bumped up.
So I'm gonna look to Pat to see where we would place that, because I'm not looking at that sheet that you're looking at, so.
You're looking at the revolving fund sheet, the yellow.
I'm looking at the yellow page,
Yeah, that's the revolving fund, so that would be the offset.
Oh, so those are only, okay, so this is the portion of the salaries that's being covered by the revolving fund.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's gonna pair with the green sheet then? Is that
Correct.
Okay.
It offsets the amounts that are in the green sheets, the pink sheets, actually.
Thank you.
But I do want to go back and say that's, it's almost one of those, you can't predict either. We have a flavor of who might leave or who might retire, but we don't always know that. Even between now and June 1st, we still may get retirement. So those numbers are always going to ebb and flow somewhat.
And I've been talking about this 391 grant for the last 3 years, because I
Yeah.
knew this was coming, and I was worried about it, because we had a 274 grant, which was a professional development grant, and that was eliminated 3 years ago, and that was for professional development for all special ed teachers, so that was challenging for us, because that was about $30,000 that hasn't come back to us, so I just wanna make you aware of the grants, because we don't have control of whether they refund them or not.
Other questions for Joan? Hearing none, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the presentation at school committee. A couple of years ago, it was wonderful, and we appreciate all your hard work and those of your colleagues, so.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I have a break now, right?
We'll see about that.
Okay.
So, yeah, everybody has to go to the bathroom. Yes, yes, yes.
When we take a break, I would strongly encourage any conversations that you're having would be out in the hallway, because all of these mics will be hot. So you might just want to keep that in mind, that it will pick up whatever conversations you're having and put it out on air and live stream it. So you may want to think about going out in the hallway to talk.
Okay, sorry, I was cooking. All right, so, is it okay if we get back here by 10:15? Does anybody need more time than that? Okay, so we'll see you guys back at 10:15.
No, she
Hi, I think I might have figured it out, but I just wanted to.
Okay.
So.
Actually, no.
So, I'm sorry, what?
Nothing.
You see me? Okay. Welcome, Chi, and we are going to hear from Sue Chi, who's going to talk to us about district technology.
So can we start?
Yes, you can.
Okay. There are 5 parts in the tight budget. The first one is contracted services. The major item in this part is the connection between schools and also internet connection. We also have some fund reserved for the IT consulting, working with software hardware companies when we need to do some new project. We also have a small amount budget for the summer help. So normally we get a college student in summertime help us do a lot of groundworks. We have to handle a lot of new deployment and also collecting old equipment, clean up and put on. So that's for that part. The computer supplies. This one purely based on the student. We reserved $9 per student. The fund is used for the technology supplies, accessories, mostly like toner cartridge, projector bulbs, like video cameras, batteries, CD, USB drive, that kind of thing. So it's, like I said, it's purely based on the amount of student. So next one is a professional development. We have a small amount there for ongoing IT trainings, like parts of universities and also workshops for the IT stuff. The computer hardware, the major item in that is the Chromebook. In the past years, we buy brand new Chromebooks for 8th grade, and that be used from 8th grade all the way to 12th grade. In the beginning, our thinking is like we like to test how long the Chromebook will last. So we start with like 5 years. It turned out like it doesn't work well in the like 5th or 4th year because the Chromebook is not designed to last that long. So starting this year, we got back brand new Chromebook for 6th grade and also 9th grade. So 6th grade will be used from all the 3 years in middle school. So once they're done, we're collecting them back. We clean up. We're gonna use for 1 more year as spares. Then for the 9th grade, they're gonna use it all the way through their high school year. So once it's done, we collect them back, clean up, erase all the data, and resell online.
So this is a transition year where you're making that switch over?
Yes, this coming summer. Yeah.
And that's why part of the.
You can see some increase there.
Yes.
Because before when we buy 1 grade, going forward we buy 2 grade.
Okay.
Yeah. And also this year, another increase you saw there is an iPad.
Yeah.
So the district, the setup we have is grade 3 to 12 we use Chromebooks, and grade K to 2 we use iPad. So since we deployed iPad many years ago, we haven't really upgraded, not even once. So we upgrade the spec iPad 2 years ago. Yeah. But for the general the iPad used for the classroom in the cart, that one because by this we never be able to upgrade. So right now it's to a degree we have to, because the iPad is so old and also the storage is so small. So the iPad is so old, like the operating system cannot be upgraded anymore. So all the new apps is not compatible. And second, the storage is so small, and there student cannot take picture, do the video, so it's really limit their use now. So that's why we have to move forward with that.
Do the iPads, do you get a special price for iPads for education?
A little bit, not much.
Okay.
But just it depends on the volume you get.
So how old are the ones that are being replaced?
It's all 6+ years.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So another one is the laptop and desktop replacement. We have a replacement cycle based on the age of the machine. So that is a standard we do every year. For right now, the time we do is like 5 years, and also 5 years for laptop, also 5 years for desktop. Mm-hmm. For the laptop, for teachers' laptop, so far we have been able to stay with this replacement cycle. But for the computer labs, we are far behind. Some lab has been running like 7-8 years old, so it's kind of limit of the money. So
the teacher laptops, are they Chromebooks?
No, it's a real laptops. It's a full size real Windows-based laptop.
Okay.
Yeah. Another item is interactive projectors, and board like smart board, that kind of thing. We start with the 8th grade, and went down all the way to K, kindergarten. Like, so all classroom was equipped with that kind of setup. We finished that one about 2-3 years ago. Now we kind of to another cycle we need to upgrade it. And also there are additional like, the art, so certain special art classroom. We never equip with those equipment. Now like, the request is coming in. Because, a lot of teachers are used to that. So when they go to a classroom without that kind of setup, it's kind of holding them back.
And that's just K-8, correct?
Actually, yes. For the interactive board, it's
Yes.
only K-8. But for the projector, it's K-12.
Okay.
So the last major one is the network equipment. Those are just routine, like ongoing, like access point, switches, that kind of, either adding new ones or replacing old ones. So the last one is the software and licensing. There are 3 major parts in that. The first one is the school operation. So the item in that is like student information system, like the Power School, so student online registration, the website hosting, teacher evaluation, like Baseline Edge, and also the health system, the SNAP, and also the library system. The second one is business operation. For that is the finance and accounting systems, and also our teacher absence management system for that. So the last one is the technology operation. In that is mostly the things like the IT department use, like online backup. So we have backup both internally and online. And other items like CloudLog is a program we use to monitor all the, not all, most of the content in the cloud. So make sure the student is safe, they don't put on some like
Inappropriate.
Inappropriate, yes. And also not only that, another major use is we actually monitor it, like student express depress or self.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
We brought up.
Yep.
So. Of course, the ticketing system, for both IT team and also facility is also in there.
I just want to say, we act regularly on the things that she brings to us, and he basically brings them to you now this year, right? I think just, probably once a week or something else.
A weekly basis, and I will say that the amount of incidences has gone sharply down.
Dramatically down
with this in place, because the minute we get a flag like that, she and I have a conversation. I call the building principal brings the kiddo in. So word is out there that, that we have a good monitoring system, and then parents are brought into the conversation. And sometimes it's students are doing a research project on said topic, and that's a good way to know what teachers know what teachers are doing in the classroom as well. So,
but it's good to know. This is what a wonderful system to have that
It works really well. Really well.
You don't think of technology like, when you look at this budget fitting into social and emotional learning, but this is definitely a real good tool.
It actually gets to like a routine. Like last week, we got an email from a law friend, Burbank principal, sent to me and Todd, just remind us, we are doing some kind of project, so don't be.
She would have gotten 100 phone calls.
So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Questions, Leah?
Very, 2 quick ones, one not so quick. So first, Google Apps, do we have to pay for that?
Only pay for the certain backup. It's a free service, but there are certain like we do pay extra for the vault kind of service. We don't pay for student. It's purely based on the full-time employee amount. So we have to pay for that. Then it covers the whole domain.
Awesome. You mentioned desktops.
Yes.
Why are those necessary with the Chromebook initiative in place?
Desktop actually. Since we started the Chromebook initiative, we have been cutting back on the desktop a lot. So the current desktop only resides in the computer labs. And high school particularly has more than others because they have so much unique program, like the CAD labs, graphic design
programs and such.
For the elementary, we haven't upgraded elementary labs for a long time since we put out the iPad and also Chromebooks. For the middle school labs, we have been cutting back a lot. And like for example, right now in Hill School, they no longer have a computer lab. Then the computer lab in Burbank School has now been upgraded for at least 6 years, if not 7. And during my discussion with both Laura Friend and also the ITS folks there, I don't think they have the desire to upgrade that one. So we basically just use it the way it is till they die.
Got it. And then I guess my last question is about this, how you're rolling out the Chromebooks. how does the current ninth grade fit into the rollout?
The current one, like I mentioned, from the current year, we purchased new laptop for 8th grade only. So 8th grade carries that one all the way through high school.
Oh,
So the current 9th grade, they got the brand new one last year.
got it. So this will be kind of the last group that has to hold that Chromebook
Yes,
for so long.
Yeah, because we feel like 5 years is really pushing the edge now, and 4 years probably is more reasonable.
Okay.
That's why we changed the model.
Other questions, Mike?
So I'm gonna stick with the hardware purchase line, and it sounds from your presentation that a lot of this stuff is sort of predictable, it's sort of the natural
Yes.
timetable for turnover and that kind of thing. But if we look from 20 to 21, there's sort of a more than a double, an increase of more than double. So I wonder if that was an underestimation from fiscal year 20, or whether it was, the evergreen process sort of costing more than we had projected.
So there's two parts actually. You see a kind of a sharp increase this year. First is definitely is a Chromebook, like mentioned. Before we buy 1 grade, now we buy 2 grade. Second part, this year is item we purchased before the E-rate program. Certain device qualify for E-rate, like the network equipment. So if we spend a lot on the network equipment, we get more money back. That's the case in previous years.
Okay.
This year we have less equipment qualified for that.
Mhm.
Like the large amount, the increase like for Chromebooks and also iPads, those are not qualified for that. That's why you only see the spending and we don't see the rebate.
So I don't think it's at all a case of underestimating.
Okay.
I think it's just, this is where we're at this
Yeah.
year with the change in E-rate and going to the 2 grades and all that. And the evergreen, as you said so eloquently, just the regular evergreen. This was predicted.
And we've talked about the cost of iPads at the younger grades that they are using, as well as smartboard technology in
Yes.
the other buildings that are just replacements, that are just high-cost items that,
Yep.
are at the end of their life.
That's another good point. Before, for the projector smartboard replacement, we don't have a dedicated line item for that. We kind of treat as something happened. We use a general line to repair it. Starting this year, we actually put in a separate line just to as a repair, and so I think that's another increase we see, and that one is now qualified for E-rate either.
So from year to year, those numbers could whatever stay where they are, or they could even drop substantially. I mean, like you said, this is from year to year, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not one, these are not lines that you're looking at that say, there should be a projected 2% increase or 3% increase. It's not, his world doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Elaine?
Question. So it's very logical to me that the Chromebooks would only last 4 years and not 5 years. But I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the older the student gets, the more they would use their Chromebook and the more detailed and the applications would take a lot more of the computing power. So I'm wondering why you don't do 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, 12. So what's the reason for that?
It's very logical thinking, but in reality, what we learn actually is very interesting. Especially in high school, the older students get, they actually intend to use their cell phone. It doesn't matter how good the machine you give them is. They actually stay with their cell phone. So it's sad to say, we actually see cases students, they don't even bring their Chromebook in because they like their cell phone so much.
That's because they have young eyes and they can see everything. That's
So
amazing.
It's,
That's funny.
that's just kind of from what we observed. And we have like our team work with there, and also we have dedicated person there. And also when we talk with teachers, that's the same feedback we get. It's
Okay.
Never would
it's hard to
have
explain,
saw
but
that
that's how it works.
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions for Chief?
Other questions for Chief?
Thanks.
Chief, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Chief.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Martina is up. We're gonna talk. Yeah.
Look at you. You're just like one of the kids with your phone.
That's why Apple is not selling as many phones as they used. Well, their kids are using them longer, and the prices of the new ones are really.
Wow, that's something. Hi, Martina.
Hi, good
Welcome.
morning. Thanks.
Okay, you're up.
Nice to be here. Thank you. So I'm going to highlight the major budget drivers in a couple different areas of the teaching and learning budget. The first one is, I think, as the other salaries, not gonna be in the actual teaching and learning section of the binder, but as a result of a retirement that we'll have at the end of this year, we, as you heard in December, are proposing to restructure the teaching and learning department, primarily with the intent to more broadly address integration of practices such as effective student use of technology, what we heard a little bit about before, and then with our new work with, our newly intensive work with social emotional learning, having people in our department who can also support teachers with integrating that into their academic content work. So with that, we are proposing the addition of a K-12 math lead and a humanities lead for this year into the department. On top of that, and with the retirement that I just mentioned, we're also requesting an administrative assistant whose responsibility will primarily be managing the educator evaluation program that we use in the district, as well as the professional development program that we utilize to manage our PD in the district. This is a function currently served by the person who's retiring, and so we're looking to have that aspect replaced by an administrative assistant. Saying that the request is in there, we're also looking for opportunities to utilize staff who are already existing in central office, who might be able to help us with these roles specifically.
So you weren't here earlier, Martina, but I was explaining that that's one of the things that we're looking at, because Mike had asked a question, I said, you know, where we're able to redeploy folks, that's one of the things that we're looking at, and this is another case of that. Like, we probably have people on staff that we're looking at doing a bit of redeployment with some of the teaching and learning component. So we're not expecting that at the end of everything, we're not expecting a huge ask of teaching and learning, because we've got that retirement in there as well. Between that and doing some redeployment, even though it's listed on here in your green sheet, it's probably not going to cost what it looks like it's going to cost right now. But those are the salaries that are equated with those people.
If I can just add one more thing, as it relates to the math position, you heard the middle school principals talk that there's a need for math specialists at the middle school, but they're willing to not put those forward necessarily right now, and it is because we want this math lead position in the teaching and learning from an administrative standpoint first, so that individual can be going into the middle schools, similar to what Kim Early is doing in the humanities lead position this year. So that's why that position in teaching and learning is pretty important and pretty crucial.
So it would be, in a sense, substituting one for the other?
Not necessarily,
Although
but-
ideally you want like a K-12 person, and then like you have department chairs at the high school, you would have math specialists
At the middle
at the
school.
middle
But this
school.
person, I think, would probably, in this first year with this position, would be kind of responsible for setting up what that's going to look like. So we recognize that need first.
And our math specialist roles within our district are typically a hybrid of student level intervention and sort of curriculum specialty within the building, so this person would be
Aren't there currently math specialists at the middle school?
Only through Title I at
Okay,
Luther
okay,
Burbank.
yeah.
It's the only school
It's the only school that has it.
full-time one.
Yeah.
Because Sawyer's K-8, their math specialist is technically K-8, but
I
she
see.
heavily focuses K-5.
Sure. Leah?
Just clarifying, it says in here elementary humanities lead. Is that because Kim Early is the upper level elementary lead?
Yes.
And so you're gonna, I'm forgetting this, but, so there are gonna be 2 humanities, but only 1 math, 1 science?
No, I think you're gonna see us, to be honest with you, I think you'll see us do some reworking of this in the next week or two, to be honest with you.
Oh.
So I think probably what we're probably gonna end up with is 1 of each, I think is probably where we're gonna land. Because again, remember that the 6.86% is not, it's not doable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to come back in here, and that's one of the areas, and we've already had discussion with Martina, but this is where we were sitting on Thursday, remember, we said this is a snapshot in time. So you're gonna see us come back and take a relook at that.
Okay, fine, but then it says, on the science one, $0 for
That's because that's one I've already cut,
Got it.
yeah.
So that means you're just gonna rework it, not that position.
Probably the science one not, but I think the science one, I think we're gonna have to wait another year on, to be honest with you. I don't know that we're gonna be able to afford that at all
Yeah, not
in
this
this
year.
upcoming
For
year.
this year.
And Kim is already in existence,
Correct.
maybe she will be stretched
It-
across?
We're looking at a variety, but good thinking on that.
Good thinking.
Good thinking,
Okay.
because we're loving what she brings to the role.
Okay.
Okay, Okay, so the next portion, which in my slide says teaching and learning, I'm really going to talk about the major budget drivers within curriculum development and professional development kind of at the same time because they're so connected to each other. So the three items that I am listing here are driven by our district improvement plan, their priorities within the district improvement plan. And most of them are sustaining work and continuing to grow work that we've already started through our district improvement plan in the last year or two. The first is to continue the middle school literacy workshop initiative. As you've heard already, this year our three sets of middle school ELA and special educators have gathered on a number of times for both professional development and some curriculum work to work on developing a shared vision and expectation for ELA instruction at the middle school level. So the PD this year has focused on skills-based planning and also an introduction to literacy workshop, and we expect to continue that work in the coming year, and that's what the budget driver is there. That's in content-based PD. It's in the line there in the description. Similarly, this will be our third year transitioning to the history social science framework that was updated officially last year, I guess. This year, our focus has been with grade 6 teachers doing curriculum development work in order to develop new units that really focus on student-led research. 6th and 7th grade teachers this year participated in some really excellent professional development with Primary Source that both raised their content knowledge in terms of regions that are very new to the curriculum framework, sort of underrepresented regions in the past. And they're also doing an excellent job modeling inquiry-oriented pedagogy, and both of those groups will be using those to plan forward their curriculum units. So next year, grade 6 will actually be implementing their units, and then grade 7 will be developing units that build off of what the grade 6 students use. The budget request overall supports curriculum development and professional development K-12, actually. I'm just highlighting that because that was a focus this year. So we also anticipate bringing some nice content professional development to the high school and some curriculum development at the elementary school in the coming year as well. And a final newer budget driver is the social emotional learning component, which we've talked about in the past as well. So as you know, that's a big focus in our district improvement plan. For next year, we hope to continue our work with the Excel network. The group who's been going has just really felt the process has allowed us to develop an SEL vision already for the district, and some of the professional development that's coming up next year, school-based, to lead school-based work to help teachers really integrate social emotional learning with the learning of academics, and to spend some real time deliberately learning about and planning for that. Some of that work has also come out of Excel this year, so we'd like to continue that in the coming year as well. And then with instructional software, I just wanted to highlight, we really kept everything the same with one exception. We've moved our student data system budget from the IT department, thank you, to ours, because through the S3 Academy, we've started some work to really develop a tool that helps us bring together all of our assessment and also some other student level data to look more holistically at students and to look at all students, so that you're not looking at reading data but nothing else. You're looking at reading data, math data. We hope to get to SEL data. Some schools are piloting that, attendance and other data, so we can look at the students from a broad picture and really work on providing comprehensive interventions for those students. And those are the major drivers in our budget. So.
Any questions for Martina?
Go ahead, Leah. What is the instructional tool that you're talking about that will give that holistic look?
It's called Platform Analytics. It's actually, it's interesting. Platform Analytics is actually a company. He utilizes Google tools, and then he builds us custom dashboards. And the benefit to that is the data lives with us. Yeah. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think I have one other question. Oh, so up and around the PD, there are a couple of line items that jump significantly.
Yes.
Times 10 in one situation. So obviously those are the SEL PD components.
Right, and you'll notice that some others, like the ELA, has gone from 43,000 to 0.
Yeah, I missed that.
And
Yeah.
actually, I should also highlight the way that I kind of work this social emotional professional development. It wasn't there last year, it was just mental health first aid. So we have incorporated that within this line, but then also included the Excel participation in this PD that we wanna have at the school-based level for next year.
So it's really just shifting the priorities, is really all it was.
Mike?
This sort of speaks to Leah's question, but if you're looking at the executive summary, the actuals over the past 3 years for professional development have jumped up pretty consistently. And I'm wondering how professional development and teaching and learning has evolved and sort of under what philosophy. I mean, has there been a philosophical shift? I mean, from 17 to what we're requesting this year, there's a jump of almost four times. So I mean, has there been sort of a specific change in the way that we're approaching professional development?
I think that I would summarize it to say that we have more actively pursued intensive content-focused professional development in the last few years. Superintendent Quincy already mentioned the ELA, the literacy PD. That was, I think, the first version or iteration of the higher budget, and I think that took us a couple different years in terms of raising the request. And then last year we added the PD for history, social science. We've also grown this year, our full PD day. We raised that request to more accurately match the budget need that we have for that day. Just now we're bringing in a keynote speaker. We're working to just bring in a more diverse offering. And I think it's resulted in a day, like our feedback last year was that 75% of educators said that day was excellent for them. And I think the result is because we're working really hard to bring in high quality PD efficiently, because we're talking about all staff on that day doing that PD to really make sure that they're getting the best that we can offer.
And I think it ties in, Todd and I were having this conversation actually just last night. I think PD ties in, you heard her talk about our district improvement plan, right? And that's, I mean, if you're going to improve, if you really believe that your district improvement plan is driving your district, then you have to make sure that you're doing what it says, you're walking the talk, you're talking, And so I think that that's really critical for us. And to her point, the feedback that we're getting from our staff has been really, really positive, that they're finding that, I remember at one point in time, I think it was my first year here, where the high school would say, well, there's nothing ever for us. Well, they don't say that now. Do you know, because it is for them, do you know what I mean? So I think I think your point is well taken for your question. Is there a change in philosophy? I think we see philosophy, philosophically, this is the underpinning, the undergirding of our work. I don't think it's the sole driver, but I think it interweaves everything that we do.
Even we've represented it in our curriculum development cycle, because we just feel like the primary source example, we feel it's critical to helping our educators navigate the substantial changes that are taking place with what we're expecting of our students now.
So we see line items for textbooks. So this is kind of a two-part question. To what extent are they ebooks that we're talking about that require an annual subscription? And are there opportunities to save money over a period of time by, instead of having annual contracts, to contract for 4 or 5 years? In my experience, there's significant savings for that, although the upfront costs would be a lot. So I don't know if there's a plan of phasing it in. It seems that it's short-sighted. And I understand the realities of budgeting and all of that, but if we were to put together some kind of a long-range plan, so we're in that cycle. And I think a lot of it has to do with, there are a lot of companies who are interested in having schools as a customer, so they'll offer a deep discount if you'll commit for 5 years. So I don't know if there's been any discussion about that or any way to consider it, maybe one department at a time, I don't know, but where are you guys in any kind of discussion relative to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we balance it, and Pat and I have talked about this a couple times with the fact that for subscriptions particularly where they're attributed to a particular year,
Mhm.
we have to find a balance between prepaying for something that we're technically not using in that year
Mhm.
versus a textbook that you're physically purchasing in a year.
Right.
So that's why at this point, we've tended to not be, unless there's a substantial savings,
Mhm.
looking at that, but we can certainly look at it again.
We have to be very careful, according to Mass General Law, about
Yep.
prepaying for anything in any given year.
Yeah.
Anything.
But I think the days of a physical textbook are numbered. I mean, just thinking about social studies, by the time you get it, it's already 5 years out of date. And so, yeah.
And quite honestly, for that reason, we've actually been, and for other reasons as well, moving away from textbooks, particularly K-8, I have to
Yes.
say, just in
Yeah.
honesty.
Yeah.
The actual driver for that is we still are investing and buying materials, but we're looking at students, we can't be offering them a single pre-digested view of social studies,
Exactly.
for example. So we're
Exactly.
looking at buying a mix of subscriptions, nonfiction, fiction
Sure.
text that will really broaden students' perspective on what they're learning and force them in the kindest way.
It's a learning
for the
experience, 'cause
development
that's what we're
to
about.
synthesize and really consider different perspectives in a way that a single investment textbook might not be able to
Okay.
provide.
But I'm thinking about in terms of perhaps more the high school where you would have
Yes. And we are
foreign language, has some kind of a textbook, science resources, et cetera.
And we are looking more toward the,
Okay.
balancing a year because of the legal side in the long term
Okay.
in that area.
Thank you, Leah.
To your point of moving away from textbooks, I think it's ideal. There's so many online textbooks today, and I think that for ancient civilization in particular, $20,000 just seems like such an enormous line item. I've taught history for 18 years and I've never used a textbook.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if with all the curriculum writing money that we have, could we develop kind of our own material to avoid this one specific line item?
So we are actually developing our own units. The intention with this is not to purchase a textbook. As one example, they're trying out already this year books that look at like the different timelines in ancient civilizations. We are looking for grade 6 next year specifically to purchase a book to support their Africa unit called Trouble in Timbuktu. It's a fiction text. So the intention with these are to buy those
Yeah.
mixed.
It's not one thing.
It's
I think
not a
that-
single text. And similar with 8th grade civics, we've done the same thing. That group did an awesome job identifying a couple different resources that they're using.
The
So
title
that's
of
what
that line is misleading
Yes,
because it
it's very
falls
much
under
is
textbooks and
misleading.
that's been a
I ignore
historical
it now.
category. But all
I've
of those
accepted
materials are not actual like a textbook. It's actual curriculum materials, and it's just the title of that category that it fits into as
It's,
know.
it's
I
kind of
just
an
picture-
old, it's an
It
old
is.
language in a way.
I picture my 6th grader's backpack.
Correct.
No.
Yeah,
Down with
it
a
won't be.
Chromebook
It's
and
not.
5 times.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, and to your point, that's when we went one-to-one, we said, our kids need to learn how to navigate the world of information. We're really focusing on building curriculum that enables them to develop those skills.
No, you're Elaine.
I am.
Okay.
Last year, you made a request for the Learn platform in order
Yes.
to analyze, application usage and
Yes.
things. So I'm wondering, have you canceled anything, or like what has come out of that?
So we're so early, it's a great question. We're so early in the process still that we haven't actually canceled anything, but we have been really interested in the data already that's come back in terms of the use. Our two part-time ITS in our department have been working very heavily on getting that system up and running. Before we can really use it to its full capacity, we need to roll it out to teachers, which we haven't yet. So this,
Okay.
while we have the subscription, has really been like a startup year for us.
Okay.
We anticipate more of that starting this summer and into next year.
Okay, and as the world of information gets more complicated, you're talking about multiple sources and balancing, like at some point we also need to simplify.
Totally, and we're really excited about the potential for that program in terms of helping us do that.
They're
Yep,
hopefully going to
absolutely.
showcase that and offer a workshop on the Learn platform on the March 6th PD day
Okay.
for faculty and for outside people as well. It has been rolled out to all principals, so principals have the tool and are able to then roll it out how they want in their buildings, but we're also going to bring it to the March 6th date as well.
Any other questions for Martina? Nope, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Martina.
Martina.
Okay.
Lisa is up. Lisa Kowicki, our nurse leader.
Excuse me. Oh, thanks. Gotcha. So there are no new positions or salary requests in health services. We are fully staffed at 9.5 FTEs and a 0.6 in one of our grant plans, which is really services all of our students in the schools. If we look at non-salary requests, contracted services has actually gone down. We no longer need, it's the end of the third-year contract with the ALICE program, so that will be going away, and we'll be looking at developing our own program so we can continue that curriculum for new staff and a refresher for staff and students on an annual basis. And then obviously the YRBS is every other year, so that line item came out this year, will be added back on again next year. Slight increase in cost for calibration of hearing and vision machines, and that's just they went up on their cost for us. So the overall line decrease went from 13,000 and some change down to 6,000, so it was a good decrease there. Our next line is medical supplies or nursing supplies and equipment. The AEDs are gonna stay the same, around 4,000. We are in need of some trade-ins with some of our AEDs that are over 10 years old now, and that's the recommendation. I'm sorry, automated external defibrillators.
Oh, okay.
That are in each building, yeah. One of those. And we've also noticed that we don't have one here in central office, and when this is a public utilized room and building, we really should have one in this building as well. So we're looking at keeping that line around 4,000 to support that. We also need to obviously add our AED pads are needed on an annual basis because they do expire, so that funds are in there as well. We are looking at some trading in some of our older ones, and there is a trade-in program, so they give us only about $150 to $400 based on the AED, and they cost around $1,300 each. There is a slight increase that you'll see in Center and Emerson School for wheelchairs that are needed to be replaced, that are again outdated. That will just go up this year and go back down next year, and then we'll reevaluate other older equipment that are needed throughout the district. Nursing professional development is remaining the same. And then the EMT program, they're asking for an increase for cadet uniform needs, educational costs, instructor fees, and supplies. I believe it's their first request in many years.
Right, well-
Pat can speak a little bit more to that.
I met with them a few weeks ago, and they pointed out to me that they've been at the same level of funding for many years. And we co-fund this program with the town of Bolton. The town of Bolton covers the salaries of the directors and some of the costs of some of the instructors. In our budget, we basically pick up the cost of a stipend for a liaison in the high school, and any other costs, like for equipment. Their equipment is ancient.
Yes.
And I mean ancient.
Is that training equipment?
It's their training equipment
yes.
that they use. It hasn't been replaced. I wanna say some of the, one of the directors is one of the first members of this program. She's a graduate of the program, and she said that some of the equipment was probably there when she went through.
Wow.
So, I think it's time to replace some of that equipment, and they asked for a little bit more money so that they could do that, and I thought that this was the year that we would do that.
That's it for me.
Any questions? Seeing none. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Rob and facilities.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'd just like to start off, Facilities Department is dedicated to supporting the students and staff of the Neshoba Regional School District with optimal physical environment for learning. We are committed to maintaining each school with best practices, energy efficiencies, and customer service. I'd like to thank the Neshoba Regional School Committee for the continued support in helping the Facilities Department in their goals from year to year. The Facilities Department this year is asking for a new hire. We're looking to add a third member to the Grounds and Building Maintenance Department. The Grounds and Building Maintenance Department consists of 2 full-time staff members that cover 82 acres of sports fields, lawn areas, flower beds, playgrounds, roadways, and parking lots, and other outside areas that are utilized by staff and students. With the Neshoba Regional School District spread across 3 towns, the seasonal demands for game preparations and sports field maintenance at the high school, the upkeep of the other buildings is very difficult, sometimes unachievable, depending on weather and other events that are going on within the elementary and the middle schools. Adding a third staff member will give the department more flexibility to be at multiple locations on a weekly basis for mowing, groundskeeping, and other sports field maintenance. Having a third staff member will free up the head custodian of the Grounds and Building Maintenance Department for maintenance tasks that come through our ticketing system. For example, rehabbing of softball dugouts, light construction projects, and general building repairs. It will also give the head custodian time to perform routine maintenance on equipment to ensure proper operation and longevity of the equipment. In the off-season, the third staff member will help with off-season equipment maintenance, snow removal operation, building maintenance tasks, and also fill in for lunchtime custodial duties in the absence of a building custodian. The addition of the third staff member could lead to a reduction in outside contract service work, and completion time on building maintenance tasks would be reduced. Adding a third member to the team will increase overall curb appeal to the grounds and buildings, leading to a sense of pride for staff, students, and the general public when they're on our properties. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
So, the additional person, I heard you just say that person could act as a substitute custodian.
Mm-hmm.
I recall that in the past, our substitute custodian line was very high. And I don't know if we've seen a reduction. I know that there were some workarounds for that, and there was a repurposing of rotations on the weekend and things like that.
Boy, that's bringing back old memories. You're absolutely right, yeah.
Bad memories, but nonetheless. So, and is there somebody, would this be a brand new hire, or is there somebody that we have that would?
This would be a brand new request.
A brand new request. And the other thing you mentioned was that they could help with maintenance and other things. To what extent, when you're hiring someone, do you look at things, or could you look at things like that they're like a licensed electrician or a plumber or any of that stuff?
We could, but they would fall under the Unit C.
Oh, I see.
It would be a Unit C position.
So this would be a Unit C position?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
yeah.
And we're looking, in that $40,000 to $50,000
Sure.
pay range,
Okay.
somewhere in there. If we were looking, for a true maintenance tech, or, we used to have a plumber, HVAC tech.
Yep.
The way that the industry is right now, you'd be in the, $75,000 to $85,000.
No, I remember from the sad past
yeah,
that
when
we
Dawn was
spent a lot of money on those
here.
things, yeah. Okay, other questions?
Can you explain a lot of these offsets that are in here? A lot of it's an extended day, or there's some other ones, but.
Actually, Pat can probably.
Yeah, they're pretty
explain
large
that.
numbers, so.
Well, a couple of years ago, we were asked to make sure that these programs were self-sustaining. And one of the things to make something actually be self-sustaining is to have them share some of the costs of the buildings that they're occupying.
Sure.
And so we decided that, electricity and heat and insurance costs are all part of the cost of the district, and the extended learning program picks up that cost. So basically, this program, if we picked it up and we put it someplace else, it would have to pay rent to somebody. And that's the way I look at it. Okay, if we had to locate this program someplace else, what would the cost be? And that's basically how I determine what the costs that we apply. And some of them are direct costs for the staff, like for the human resources, and you'll see there's a bit of an offset for that.
Custodial.
Custodial.
Okay, and so with each of these offsets that's on here, the programs are still in solid footing
Yes.
financially on their own. I mean, I guess that's a question for you, Raina, but I know, because there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in extended day offsets here, and I was just surprised to see them that much. Okay.
Because in the past, we didn't account for those, and we actually ended up spending more money out of our budget to cover the costs that should have been covered by programs that were generating income, or people that were renting our facilities at a very discounted rate. But, so now this is better reflects the cost recovery of those things.
And this was part of the MASBO recommendation.
Exactly.
that,
And the forensic
that,
audit.
Yep.
You know, that we do apply some of these costs to this program.
Yep. Did you have a question?
I did have a
Derek?
question.
Go ahead.
I wonder if Mr. Fisher could
Sure.
elucidate for me the critical need attendant to the wear layer at the track.
So the running track is 7, 8 years old now, and it's comprised of 3 different layers. You have your asphalt base layer, and then there's a rubber layer, and then there's a wear layer on top of that, and that helps the integrity of that second layer with the foot traffic, with the obviously the running season, general use from townspeople coming to use the track. With that wear layer, it just helps the integrity of the track. If we didn't do that, that wear layer would go away. It would get into that second layer, and we could end up with holes in the track, which would cause obviously safety concerns for track meets and things like that.
So that's something that needs to be done this coming year?
You can see on on lane number 1, because the wear layer is red in color, and the second layer is actually black. You can actually see some of the black
right
coming through.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to get on that, so that we don't end up issues going forward.
I'll ask the question I usually ask, and the bonding still goes to 2024
For the track?
for the track?
I don't,
25.
25. And the useful life of the track ends in,
I don't know.
Potentially another 7 or 8 years.
so,
And it's all based on use. The more it gets used, the more it's going to break down, the quicker it's going to need to be replaced.
okay.
Okay, other questions? Mike?
Rob, I'm just wondering, I see in one of the line items you've put in for a replacement vehicle. What's the status of the overall fleet, other than that one vehicle?
That obviously that's for the ass this year, that's the worst one. The significant rot in that vehicle. It's not going to pass inspection. We have been replacing vehicles over the past 4 or 5 years.
We try to do one a year.
Yeah, we're in decent shape right now. We're just trying to take the older ones and get them out of rotation, and upgrade them. They seem like they're getting used more and more, not just for the special needs program. They're used after school for athletics, field trips and things like that. So having reliable vehicles, in the fleet is key.
And that's, if I can just jump into, that's kind of new too, because it used to be just sped, but we've kind of come to, I think, a nice agreement last year, so that those vehicles are used beyond just sped for teams or whatever it is that they need to move. I would point out that we actually had 2 vehicle replacements that we felt we needed in this budget like a week ago, and we removed one and just left one in. And then Pat and I said, at the end of the year, let's see where we stand, and if there's any money there, then, because that's a student vehicle, if memory serves me right. And we kind of have like a type of evergreen plan ahead with our vehicles. For example, I think next year we're looking at the handicapped.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of gearing up to that handicap van replacement, which will be significantly more expensive than some of the others. So,
But I think that when I look at our vehicles right now, I think we're in far better shape now than we were 4 years ago.
Leah?
I'm just wondering, the security equipment piece, there's a substantial increase, and
Sure,
it seems
yep.
that that's because of some replacement. Can you, or are you able to tell me, are there cameras inside our high school?
Inside the high school? The high school has the most amount of cameras in the district.
They're operational?
Yeah.
And so is this all part of that?
So what we did, last year, we had gone to the towns for capital requests for the security enhancements, and it was, the camera upgrade project. And we felt that it was better to bring it and put it in the operational budget, to make sure there was equality across the district, because we didn't know where the towns were gonna land as far as capital requests, and approval. So we put it into the operation budget to make sure it was, equal across the board, so we, could get the buildings up to where they need to be as far as.
So that one town
coverage.
didn't agree and one town didn't, so.
Can you speak to the, say, functionality, for lack of a better word? Are they evaluated on a regular basis in terms of how well they are operating? Are there any cameras that aren't working? How are they assessed?
Right now, all cameras we've been upgrading a little bit here and there. As cameras fail, we upgrade right away.
Okay.
We don't let them lapse. Because obviously it's important to have working cameras in the buildings. Some of the older cameras, the quality of the picture is
not good.
It's not good at all. So that's why you see a big focus this year on upgrading, and it's gonna take a couple years to get to where we need to be. Like I said, we've replaced cameras as they've failed, and we're working with a couple different vendors and working with the building principals to prioritize areas, where they have issues within the buildings and, focus on those areas first and branch out from there.
Okay. I have another question. I want to get back to the whole substitute custodian thing. So I'm looking at page 2 of the executive summary, and which of those line items would reflect, is it the one custodial overtime expenses? Because that's down by 13%. Is that where we would, there was a line that concerned us relative to how much overtime and the use of subs.
Right, I would say now, Anne Marie and Pat and Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, like, you're absolutely right. This goes, and it kind of predates you, Rob. Like, my first year here, we had real,
$180,000 in overtime.
yeah, we had real issues between overtime and in fact, bring back the memories. I mean, sometimes it was as much as they were already making in overtime. So it was a lot of money that we were losing. But you're absolutely right. We went to a whole different setup and put people on through the weekends, and we've done a whole, I think, some really good reorchestration of that unit. I would say right now, I don't think that we really have any major problems that I can think of in that unit anymore for major overtime issues. I don't want to say abuse of sick time, but a lot of sick time or lost or days off or whatever. I think that unit's functioning very, very well right now.
No, I think it's important to note that that was an area that we were highly concerned about.
It was.
And that a plan was put into place and over time has yielded a decrease in a line item.
And good results for us.
And good results, and that's why I like the fact that in terms of looking at this additional member to the grounds and building maintenance, that it'll be like a multi-purpose position, that it's not just the grounds, it's wherever we need this person to go, that there's that availability. And again, because there are so many new folks on the committee, I think it's important to know that there are things that were huge concerns and huge issues that have been tackled and resolved in a way that has resulted in a savings for the district.
Absolutely, and I'd like to point out too, this, Rob brought this forward last year as well, and we ended up having it on the cutting block last year. This year, I would sure like to see, I don't know if we'll be able to push it through or not, but I certainly strongly support it. And we haven't focused on this, but he did allude to it. Sometimes these positions save us in other contractual services lines. So it's like it goes back to like a swap, and this is one of those positions I think will save us in other lines. So I personally, I really support this particular position.
Other questions?
To what extent do you have the resources, financial or otherwise, to consider environmental sustainability in some of the work that you're doing to facilities? So everything from, switching out to LED light bulbs, or even all the way up to electric cars. Those things tend to be a large outlay up front, but they actually tend to save money in the long run. So are we even able to think about that?
Sure, we
do actually.
Yeah.
You're sitting in the building that just had this done like this week.
Right now, they're close to wrapping up. We were working with the town of Bolton. We're part of their Green Community Initiative, and they're doing an LED conversion upgrade to this building in the Emerson Wing. the light fixtures have been upgraded or shortly be upgraded to LED fixtures. Anytime that Jim Brigham, our district electrician, is changing out fixtures, he's changing them out to LED fixtures. There's incentives from National Grid where the cost for the fixtures are next to nothing. So there's not a cost for the fixtures, and then there's a savings, on electricity. In some of these, the capital requests, we're actually looking to upgrade some of our equipment with VFDs, variable frequency drives, which is a cost savings because that equipment's not running at 100% all the time. Because if a piece of equipment turns on, it might not need 100% of the capacity, but it doesn't have the availability to lessen that load. So adding these VFDs on there will, it'll run based off the need of, what the piece of equipment is, which is a huge cost savings. You've got some pumps and motors that, are 10, 15, 20 horsepower motors, and if they're running at 100% for no reason, it's a huge cost, to the district.
Yeah, I've got a variable speed heat pump in my home,
Yeah.
so I get it.
Yeah, so.
Just a comment, when we have met with high school students about things that concern them, they are very concerned about green initiatives, the environment, and sustainability. And I think that certainly we weren't aware of what's going on at the district level. It'd be good to have some way to share what is going on in each of the buildings or through the towns. This partnership with the town is great. I don't know if there are equivalent things in Lancaster and Stowe as well, but certainly students don't see, they look at what's in front of them, which is normal, but these things make a big difference, sometimes immediately, sometimes over time. And it's just be good to have that awareness that the school district is doing its
a lot
part.
of the pieces of equipment, they're in the ceilings, they're in the, the
Sure.
boilers, and they don't see those things.
Right.
Other than, reduction in, hopefully electricity costs.
Sure.
We are looking at all the buildings, we're in that 20-year, kind of shift. The buildings were renovated 20 years ago. So all this equipment is starting to get to the end of its life expectancy. So it's one thing we're looking at, boilers, upgrading new boilers, which is going to be a cost savings. Alternative fuels, whether it's propane or, natural gas, if we could. Stowe is on natural gas, which is nice. So, when we upgrade the boilers there'll be a huge cost savings there with the high efficiency boilers that we can put in. So that's what we look at, when we're trying to do projects like that.
I would say too that not only alerting the students or maybe publishing some sort of a memo that says what you have done, but also trying to leverage their willingness to work maybe for initiatives in volunteer capacity, saying to them, here are a couple of things that would actually make our facilities greener, but we need labor to complete it. So I bet that
Child labor, yeah.
kids would,
Volunteers.
National Security, the National Honor Society, and
Yes.
kids are always looking for ways to engage the student leaders in the building. So even just thinking in those terms, because there's clearly some traction in the student body to help.
Very interested, and it was one of the top topics that came up
Yeah.
in the sessions we had. Great.
Any other
questions? Super. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob.
Appreciate it. Services. Town Hall Food Services. First of all, thank you so much for that outstanding breakfast. Delicious. The presentation was beautiful, and thank you so much.
We are very blessed to have such a wonderful staff and creative staff that allows us to do such great things, not only here but throughout the district.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take a second just to thank them for their support as well.
Sure. Okay, you're up.
All right. Well, we all know this is my favorite topic, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. So if you need to give me the hook, please feel free. We are looking at some increased participation this year and hope to see it continue to grow next year. Part of that is because of, and that should say 21, I'm just looking at that, but that's due to the talent of our staff and our willingness to work with new cutting-edge menus and concept meals and things like that. We're also looking to increase increase some of our technology that we use within our school nutrition program, whether it be in our vending programs or bringing some nice and very brightly colored and live menu boards that we'll be able to share with our students on a daily basis who just happen to pass them not only what's on the menu for the day, but the nutritional information behind it and things like that. So we're looking to bring those in this year or next year as well. We continue to collaborate with other programs in the district, like our extended learning program and special education program, to make or increase the awareness of our school nutrition program. Although I can't believe I've been here almost 10 years, it's always good to promote from within and let our students and faculty and staff know exactly what we're doing. So we try to do that. And greener means, I think you guys we're talking about that with Rob. We too are looking for greener means, and we hope to do that. There's so many different ways that we can do this, but unfortunately for us, they're very costly. You mentioned some of the things that students notice, and I know students notice that we use styrofoam trays. Our trays are made of styrofoam, but they don't contain many of the chemicals that were used in styrofoam 10 years ago. I don't know if anybody knows this besides Rob and I, or maybe the people at this table, but all our trash goes to a trash to energy incinerator. So to use a biodegradable tray, something that would cost 4 to 5 times more than the styrofoam tray that we use, to be burned anyway, is kind of counterproductive, because we're taking trays out of the system. I mean, obviously, you can spin anything any way you want it, but that's how we're looking at things right now. We're doing a trash to energy program, and that way we're able to use these styrofoam trays with a lesser impact on the environment. We all know that washing hardware or hard trays and real stainless steel flatware would probably be the best system, but none of our schools are on sewer systems. And our septic systems can't handle that amount of water and chemical being injected into them for the proper sanitation of our flatware and hard plastic trays. So I continue to meet with suppliers and manufacturers. I have a call into the waste to energy incinerator. I actually grew up with the man who manages and directs that facility. So we'll be in touch soon. I'm working with one of the high school students to increase some awareness. We've eliminated the small plastic straws at the high school now. The only straws we use are for our larger blended parfaits, and we'll be moving to paper straws for that shortly. They'll be on our bid next year. With regard to finances, I think we're looking at some pretty level numbers. There's no real significant increases except to one line item that we do have, and that is contract services. And as we move forward every year, as I said, who can believe I've already been here almost 10 years? That means our equipment's 10 years older and needs more repair. So we'll also be looking at a replacement program for things like that. We're not at that point yet. It's still, we're still within the area where it's more efficient to repair them. And that's the route we're taking now, but come soon, we'll start looking at replacement costs of some of these. We've done this in several schools already regarding the cooking center that we have in Stowe. We have a cooking center at the high school and one in Lancaster as well. And these are state-of-the-art cooking centers, ovens or combination ovens that are able to do tremendous amounts of cooking using the smallest amount of power. It incorporates steam and dry heat, and that too is helping with our participation as well, because we're able to really crisp things like French fries, and things that should be crispy are crispy, and things that are not. So
Awesome,
That's
thank you.
pretty much it. We have a great program, and I'm very proud to be able to sit here and share it with you today.
And I just want to say, you had mentioned about letting staff know or students know, and I'd like to say there's somebody sitting in our room right now that lets us know when Shepherd's Pie literally has it on her calendar to shout it out to the entire.
Who could that be?
And it's coupled with your turkey meals, I believe she buys several to take home the days that you have it.
Adding
So-
to that participation.
Yes, so we won't say who it is that's sitting in the back of the room, but we rely on her to tell us when it's Turkey Day and Shepherd Pie Day because we all buy it.
And one more thing, we hope to bring up to full speed our tweets. We've started a Twitter account, and hopefully that will lead to more connections through Twitter. And if we connect on your page and principal page and things like that, hopefully more students and families will see it and things like that too.
Questions for Tommy Lee?
So thank you for giving us an update on the green initiatives. You're right, students only see what's in front of them, so the styrofoam trays was definitely the big one. The other one was composting. So can you talk about, like, if you've looked into it, what are the obstacles, what are the roadblocks? Like,
Well, for us, we generate a lot of, if we used compostable trays, that's something we would generate a lot of compostable material. We don't have the room to be able to compost or the means. For that amount of compost, we'd need some sort of a digester and somebody to take care of that, which I don't have in my budget, and I know facilities doesn't have it in theirs. We shared, we actually met, Rob and I both met with a company out of Ashland, Mass, who would take our compostable materials away for a fee. And again, that was a pretty, to be able to have it picked up regularly, we did generate a good amount, but not enough to get it picked up for nothing. And therefore, there was a cost associated with it. And if you look at like my budget for next year, we're looking at approximately a $10,000 in the black budget. So it's great that we're in the black, but $10,000 doesn't allow for a lot of nice things like someone coming and picking up your recycling, not your recycling, but your compostable materials. We do send all of our metal and cardboard to our recycling, or through our recycling program throughout the district. But right now, it's not in our budgets to be able to handle that, or our physical means either, physical and fiscal means, to be able to handle that from within. The students I meet with all seem very eager to have a composting program, and then they find out what it would entail, and the volunteers dwindle rapidly, unfortunately.
I'm just really appreciative of the fact, Tom, that you and Rob have looked into this and are taking even more than baby steps, to be honest with you, along this road. So I personally am very appreciative of the work that you're doing in this area.
I have to say, in my tenure year, it's been great to work with Rob, because we are able to work together and do things like this and search out actual answers to situations together. And it really, it's a great working relationship, and I'm glad to have that with most of the people in this room, all the people in this room. We're very blessed, so.
Steve?
Maybe this is a question for Tom and Rob, the PFAS situation in Stowe. Are we still hauling in water? Are we still hauling in food that's cooked somewhere else? And
Yes, well,
do we know how long that situation may
I'm
last?
not sure about the timeline. But what we're doing on our end, yes, we are still using bottled water. We've been able to arrange menus so that most of the cooking, pretty much all of the cooking is done within our own facilities in each town. And we've adapted our cooking methods to be able to handle things, whether it's pasta or whatever. Things are being cooked on site, which leads to a better quality product. And as to with regards to timing, Rob?
The PFAS filtration systems are in place, they're installed. The next step is for DEP to come out and inspect and give their approval, and give the sampling schedule and what we need to do. It'll go online, the system will go online for a week or two, just to get through the whole system, flush out any water that's in the building. Then we'll have to take tests of the water, that's a period of time before we get those tests back, and then once we get the numbers back and, they're below, DEP's thresholds, then we can, move back to, using the bubblers and things like that. Hoping within a month's time period, maybe a little bit longer, but we're
All the credit
almost
to
there.
you though, Rob, for that, like all the credit to you for getting on top of that and dealing with it so well.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So.
Yes, I know.
Leah?
Is there upkeep over time, or once they're installed, they're good? I don't think I saw it in your budget.
You'll see there's an increase in the inspections and compliance.
Inspections, yeah.
That falls under that because there's a significant cost to the the sampling. Each sample is $400 to $500, and for the when we go online, there's going to be weekly sampling done both at Center and Hale School. So this year. Not forever, I shouldn't say that. I don't have an answer to that. The frequency of testing should be reduced over time. Once they see the numbers, that are staying below threshold, then, the frequency. As far as maintenance goes, they've installed 4 with their vessels. They're 16-inch in diameter by about 60 inches high. And they're going to take samples. There's sample taps in between each one of the vessels. So once the first vessel shows breakthrough, and I don't know what that number is, if it's going to be 0.15 parts per trillion or the 0.20 0.20 parts per trillion. But once they see breakthrough in that first one, then they basically take number 4, move it to number 1, and then it continues down the chain like that. So once they see that breakthrough, then they start moving them out. Once that medium, the activated charcoal, is expired, there's a cost with that. They have to take it out, remove it from the vessel itself, and then replace it. So they're saying about a 2-year time frame for the medium inside, those vessels. But it's a pilot program. We're starting from scratch basically. There's some larger municipal, filtration systems that are out there. But, as far as ours goes, they're treating this as a pilot program, and, they're going to take our findings and, and apply it to other, other systems. So it's kind of a trial and error type thing. So let's see what happens.
Great,
We're almost
thank
there.
you.
I would just want to reiterate that, building the awareness of the green initiatives that the school district is taking, and with regard to the system you were talking about, I hope it gets the publicity that we got when we self-disclosed that we had high levels, because it's very impressive, and it doesn't happen overnight. I know it takes time and effort and attention to detail, so thank you so much for your work in that regard. And Tom, thank you for enlightening us about the initiatives you're taking. And it would be good if they were more widely known. I know you have a student working with you. That student is not doing a good job blabbing about it. And I just mean that the more people know, because it is an important topic for everybody, and I think it's important for folks to know what's going on in the district. Because once kids know, then it makes a huge difference.
It's a great idea, and maybe perhaps we can put it on our page, on the web page, as another link, as maybe a did you know about our greener initiative within the school
I think the
nutrition program.
chieftain, the editor of the chieftain is going to be at the meeting on Wednesday, so maybe
This
that
would be a
would
great
be
story.
a story that they could do, because it's great, because really there's a lack of awareness. And so the assumption is that we're not doing anything, and we're doing amazing things thanks to you guys, so thank you.
Thank you, collaboration makes it all easy. So thank you for your time.
Thank
Hope
you.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, you too.
Raina,
Extended day, Raina.
closing in on the end.
Don't jinx us.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back. Because I'm going to be presenting to you folks on Wednesday. I'm excited about that, and I'm at the tail end of our workshop. This will be much briefer, which is a good thing, but really the heart of our program, and continues to be, is the staff, the caring staff that embrace our kids. That's the bottom line. And our focus this year, and it will continue to be regardless, it will be the SEL, because that's really what makes our program different. And combined with that is safety. And I want to put that out first and foremost, because when you have large spaces that are open In other words, you don't have defined separate classrooms, safety becomes even more paramount. And I think that as part of our staffing challenge and issue is that we really need to maintain a 1-to-12 ratio, 1 staff to 12 students. That is for students who are above K. My kindies, I like to call them, my kindies, we want to have a 1-to-10 ratio. And our kindergarten population, interestingly enough, continues to grow. K1 and 2 is our biggest component, and our 3rd, 4th, and 5th kind of keep going lower. And it's fine, it's all good, it just means you have to think through the staffing. So at our center school, just to give you a perspective, because we have 3 sites, Center, Lancaster, and Bolton, the total number of students at our center school, and I say total for our extended learning program, is 153. Now that's not on every day, but on any given day I have about 120. My MRE program, my Lancaster, is 96. Not every day, because some students come 1 day a week, some come 5. That average number is about 67 every day. My total number for Bolton here is 78, and that number every day is between 55 and 60. So we looked at the numbers, and I do a lot of shuffling. I feel like I'm getting really good at chess, even though I don't know how to play the game. But who can I move? How do we keep our staff excited and stimulated to try different arenas? But at this point, I can't shuffle anymore, and I do need another site coordinator at the center school. I restructured the program such that we'll have our Ks and 1s overseen by 1 site coordinator. Our 3s are 2nd and 3rd by another site coordinator, and our 4th and 5th by another. Right now, we just have the 2. We need a 3rd because we just have too many bodies. That's the bottom line. And it's a good thing. It's an important asset, I think. So that's in the budget. Everything else has pretty much, and I should mention that we also have our high school students, and that's a big heartbeat for me. I love nurturing their competency and confidence. We typically have between, on any given season, and I use season deliberately because it's sports, and any given season we might have 3 to 4 high school aides. Those aides are juniors and seniors. You will hear more about on Wednesday how we're putting together, or I'm implementing a mentor aide training program for the freshmen and the sophomores. But right now it's the juniors and the seniors. I might have between 3 and 4 at any given site on any given season, which it bolsters the safety factor immensely. But they're still kids, so I still need my adults. My budget is flat, it's level spending. I have increased, a couple areas, and everything's offset in my program. It's self-sustaining, is offset by tuition, and also the multi-week enrichment programs that I bring in, where we charge more because we have to offset to the facilities thing and all that. And you'll hear more about the enrichment revenue in our vacation camps. My first one's coming up on Wednesday, to kind of understand more how that plays into the the level spending. I feel blessed, I have to say, lots of learning this year and last year, and I think that we'll continue to have a really very exceptional program, which is competitive. It's definitely competitive. The more that we have this, my staff is my heartbeat. I have to continue to remember that. I always remember that, actually. Open to questions? Questions for me? Oh, come on.
This one's pretty simple. Oh, you're gonna be there on Wednesday.
Oh, that's true.
But go ahead, Leah.
Just really quick, as you increase your staff at center, are you thinking about maybe increasing your cap? Because I think that a wait list is.
Thank you very much, Leah, yes. So that's a great question. I struggle with it. We have, I had thought about capping. Right now we have a wait list of about 25 families. I can't let more families in, even if I had more staff. It's just too congested. It's too chaotic. I do want to say that if space wasn't an issue and we could access more areas, that would be different. But given the confines, I just can't. I think that the 85 to 90 for the K through 3 is pretty hefty. We went up quite a bit. And my 4th and 5th, which we pulled out of the Hale School, came back to center. That lost some space for us. So again, space is at a premium. I wish I had this magic wand. I mean, I can't tell you my heart feels for the families. You know, they're on a wait list, I call them back, I, you know, keep them posted, and it's, so the answer is no. In a short way.
Other questions for Raina?
You'll hear more from Raina on Wednesday, but to just applaud the efforts that she's done to bring in SEL programs to the extended learning program that coincide significantly with the district improvement plan. She's done a really good job doing that. It's an extended part of the school day. And you'll hear about this on Wednesday too, but even working with the high school to bring in a lot of high school students and
Awesome.
to really bring that level of SEL and climate from the high school to her program and having kids be mentors to the younger kids. So kudos on that.
And I
So
want to thank you. Your leadership has made, you give credit to everybody else, but your leadership has made such a tremendous difference in this program. First of all, getting it to be cost recovery was huge for us. But then to go, you know, it's an after-school program, but all the other things you've brought into it have really made it an exceptional program.
It's fun.
And I know you love what you do. So thank you so much.
I'll see you
Thanks, Raina.
Wednesday.
Thanks, Raina.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Okay, Administration and Human Resources.
Last piece.
Patricia Maroney and Anne Marie Stoiker.
And we're right on time.
Oh my God, you keep doing it.
Save the best for last. So I think Pat's just gonna review just one or two things, just to highlight one or two things, you know, particularly about drivers and such. So, you know, and Anne Marie really, her role is just if there's anything else that has happened this morning that you still have a question of with regards to staffing, this is your chance to ask her. So Pat, you're just gonna highlight a couple of things.
Right, as far as our system-wide budget, a lot of these things are predetermined by assessments and by like Worcester Regional and whatever, so the numbers that are in there are out of our control at this point. For transportation, we've negotiated an option year with our current provider, D-Bus. And also, you'll notice that it's a little bit less than last year, and it's reflective of the reduction in the cost of the full-day K transportation, which is basically about, I think it's about 59,000 to transport the kids midday. There's a little bit of a shift in the debt service line for the turf field. And we talked about this a little bit when Tanya was up talking about her budget. Like that revolving fund has depleted and we haven't been able to take as much. And we knew at some point in time this would happen. So we're trying to align it more with the receipts that are coming into that line, into that revolving fund. So you'll see a bit of an increase there. And again, the assessments are all based on the preliminary numbers that the governor just released the other day. And if I can just kind of jump ahead to insurance and insurance and employee health insurance. We're waiting for our new numbers for health insurance and dental. They're actually meeting today. They have their big board meeting, and at this meeting, they decide, you know, what their new rates are gonna be for 2021. Hopefully, we'll have them in a week or so, sooner, I hope, but, and all the other insurances, we really don't know what the increases are gonna be until a little bit further into the spring, so I have estimated increases in there. And in the back of your book, if you look, there's like an insert and the copies of the capital requests to the towns and for the high schools, so that you can have that to take a look at. I haven't met yet with the town of Stowe in regards to that. There's a scheduled meeting coming up. I've met very briefly with Bolton, and I forwarded the capital request to Lancaster, and I am waiting response from them, so that's about it. Does anybody have any questions about anything in particular?
I think let's just talk quickly about steps forward for, because Pat and Michelle and I really will take the lead now moving forward. And I've said this before and I say it again, we don't work in isolation. As we look, because we've still got a hefty task ahead of us. We're at 6.86 and that's not feasible. So how do we get to that next number, whatever that looks like? We did work last week on sourcing out additional reductions. That's not done in isolation. Every time we go to make a reduction, we call whoever's department or unit or school. If it's a principal, we call them and say, this is what we're thinking. We try to make sure that they have as much control as they can over whatever the reductions are in their world, because we don't feel that we should be the best ones to judge what should go and what should stay. So, for example, at the last administrators meeting, we had mentioned that we needed, for example, a $10,000 cut in each one of the buildings and $20,000 at the high school for some smaller incidental areas. And they went back, did the cuts, and then shipped them over to Michelle, and then she inputted them. So that's how we make our reductions. But we have our work cut out for us. We have reductions, as I said earlier, already for Monday that we'll be inputting, that Michelle's already got a list, a running list that we'll start to put in. We'll see where we're at Wednesday night. I don't know where we'll be, as I'm sitting here right now. It won't be the 6.86 though, because we've basically got a couple of weeks now to whittle that down to as close as we can get to where our towns would like to see us go.
Steve, did you have a question?
While I understand the addition of the $50,000 to the track and field stabilization account, that's an account we set up a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the debt service going from $50,000 to $140,000
Right,
in
but-
1 year?
Yeah, but that's because of the revolving.
That's because we were taking money from the revolving fund to offset the cost of that.
Okay, so that's the additional 100,000.
Yes.
And there's no money left in the revolving account?
Not enough to cover it. From this point on, it will be whatever is coming in.
Kind of like OPEB. You have to pay for it out of current budget
Yes.
issues rather
Right,
than.
right, it's gonna be out of current. We don't have any
Yeah.
reserves left
We
there.
don't have any
for that.
reserves left.
But yet we saw that coming. I mean, a couple
Yeah,
of years
we
ago,
knew that it
you
was
asked
gonna
us to
dry up
spend that down,
eventually.
so here's where we are. We've spent it down, and this is where we
And
sit.
we've got 3 or 4 more years to pay this thing,
Yes.
and then we start again.
I know that this is not for fiscal year '21, but it looks like we have a projection to replace the roof above the gymnasium at the high school. Do we have any sense of how much that's gonna cost us? This is slated for '23, so I know that this is
Yeah, I think,
projection.
I don't think I don't think any one of us would want to put a projection out there right now, because I mean, too much can change between now and then, whether it's cost of labor, cost of product. I think it would be foolhardy for us to put an idea out there right now. It's a lot, though. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna be a lot.
Yeah.
Good thinking though, because I'm hoping that what you're seeing again, and you would have seen this last year, but we already start thinking ahead to that next year. Like, and you've heard that a couple of times today, that we see these things on the horizon. No different than the track. I mean, and I think we've been very proactive with all of that kind of thing. So that's certainly on our radar, Mike.
Other questions for Emery?
And then we just thank Vicki and Darcy for coming, our district treasurer and our payroll person. They insist, I encourage them, no, stay home with your families. They insist on coming just in case there's any questions about the finances that they can answer for us. It's really, my partners in crime, it's great to have them here just in case. I know Michelle, Pat feels the same way about having Michelle here. It's they're lucky.
We've got a great team all the way around. Our administrators, I thought that they presented beautifully today, every one of them. And I think that's when I take a look back 4 years ago, our administrators truly understand their budgets. Like, they really do know, they know how to build them, they know how to make cuts, and they know the priorities. You see that the district improvement plan really provides the undergirding for the work that we're doing in the district. You see that professional development is a key component to our work, always trying to do better. You look at the March 6th date and where that's landed now as opposed to where it was. Like, I feel really good about the work that we are doing, and I think that we try to do the best bang for the buck with the money that we've got, and I think we did a good job with that.
When will we have the next iteration of the?
Well, Wednesday night, you'll recall that what we would normally do is kind of give you the broad numbers, right? And say this is where
That's what we
we've
got.
landed, and that, so Wednesday night, we'll probably do that, and, when Pat's update, so here's where we're sitting right now.
Other questions, Mary?
I just want to echo what Brooke said in terms of everybody who turned out and people who were here, especially on a Saturday. Now, we know that Congress meets on Saturday, but in my
Not
experience,
regularly.
but in my experience in education, this is the first time that I am attending something on a Saturday. And so this speaks to the commitment all the way down the line, and it's really impressive. And I just want to thank everybody too.
Wait, there are more to come.
But also to,
There's the goal setting Saturday and things like, so this is not the only
don't
Saturday.
forget bowling, our bowling league that we have. We haven't
That's right.
talked to the new folks about that, but that's usually on a Saturday.
Yes.
So, no, I want to thank everybody for your attention to this, and I know this is one of the things that are defined as one of our roles, and I appreciate the level of questions and the attention. What I would like to suggest folks do, if there are, as you go home and really digest this and go through it, there are other questions that you have about the budget, you can send them to me, and I'll make sure they get to the proper channels so I can put them all together. And then I just wanted to remind folks of the January 15th meeting, we had the SPED presentation, and I know that there were questions that folks had after that. If you could get those to me, and I'll send out an email to remind you guys. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to mention too, you'll notice that when you come into this particular workshop, there's only enough binders for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is because this is a draft. This is not something that should be widely circulated to a whole bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something I'd sit down and share with everybody, because again, by Monday, it will be different. And then you would have to go back and consistently explain this or that, and you just, so I would really encourage you to kind of keep it close to your chest. I mean, the fact that we're talking about it on air, so we're okay to say what we're saying, but I would just caution you with that. We never make copies for people that come to sit at these sessions.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I
yes,
did,
Joseph.
listen, I'm sorry, my
Go ahead.
attention might have been divided. I heard the superintendent say 6.86. Is that the percentage over the fiscal year 20 budget that this budget?
Between last year and this year's
Okay,
difference.
so this budget, this preliminary first draft budget is at approximately, we'll call it 7%, if you don't, okay. Now, and again, forgive me if my attention was diverted, but there was an email that you sent earlier this week where you were talking about 4%. Okay. Is that the target goal for the budget for fiscal year 21?
That's the target. We're looking to hit there just under is what
Okay.
we're looking at. It really depends. To be honest with you, the other thing that plays a factor in this, and sometimes a bigger factor than our reductions, is the revenue side when it comes in, right? When the revenue comes in, I said in my email that I was, marginally disappointed. I think I used different words, but with the revenue side that came in, because we only got 50,000 more than last year for Chapter 70. Well, maybe it was 78, but it wasn't like it was
small,
like, it was
small
small amount when you think about how large our budget is. Like, I would have liked to have seen, quite frankly, 1 or 2 million, and that's what we even said. 2 million would have just like,
That would
that'd have been perfect, yeah. Because when we reduce, it's harder to reduce than when we put in revenue. So we're still waiting on some pieces of revenue that will come in that could still make a difference for us. So this is where we sit effective today, but for example, if she gets different insurance numbers, that will make a difference for us, so there's lots of moving pieces right now.
So just to follow up on this, okay, so the target,
However we get there.
Yeah, approximately 4%. I did note in your email that you had some communications with the sending communities town administrators. And I don't want to be a doomsayer here, and I know that this probably never happened in the district, but it seemed to me that the Bolton Select Board was pretty adamant that they only want to see 3%. And I wanted to say that the Lancaster Select Board, I would say, if I had to assess the situation, were acquiescing by their silence. I didn't hear any.
No, they did say.
They said-
Oh, they did, okay.
Yes,
then
no,
I
they
said
actually
that.
did,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So where the town, what feedback, if anything, are we getting from the town administrator as far as?
Well, I think the town administrators trust us enough to know that we work to try to get as close to the number that they need as possible. We have done that every single year that I've been here, and I don't think that we've let them down. So, this year, again, I would suggest that Stowe is gonna come out, if there was a winner, because right now they're sitting at, I think, 5.19 or something like that. So if for us to go down to hit, like, basically Bolton's number, Stowe is gonna be in a really good shape. So it's really Bolton and Lancaster right now, but Bolton is the one I think that's struggling the most. And when I honestly, when I saw the additional minimum contribution for Bolton, up 250,000, I thought, wow, that's, for a community that's struggling right now, when I saw that, I thought, I don't know how that's gonna work here either. And I think Lancaster was 160, and I think Stowe was 131,000.
So as we move forward and the reductions come in, because I was at the same meeting with Joseph, and we heard what Bolton and Lancaster were saying, I think it's important that we know, and the community knows, what each percent of an increase translates into, and I would like to see, when we get to that point, scenarios. So if we get that 6.8 down to 4%, what the impact on the communities are, and to get it to where they're saying 3%, what it would mean in terms of our cuts. So that needs to be clearly identified. And the other thing is any work that you do with the town administrators, and I know that you work very closely with them, if there are any creative solutions. And I know that you guys really work hard at that, but just to see what the significance of those cuts are, and we'll just have to make decisions based on that.
I think anytime you get, and the reason I say 4 is because I think that I think that we'll be comfortable to get to 4. It's still gonna mean reductions, but from 4 to 3 is going to be people. Like, it will be absolute people positions, because that's the only way that you can make those kinds of cuts, because it's not textbook line money. Like you see, like the schools, we can't get anything more from their budget. Like, we just really can't, so it'll start to be people, or you're waiting for, as I say, different revenue streams to come in, because that always has a much more higher positive impact on it than making reductions. So to be honest, we're really waiting to see, where is circuit breaker gonna land? Where is regional transportation going to land? Where, and we're saying, okay, so as we're looking forward, like I said, I didn't want to put the additional 250,000 in from E&D, because right now we're sitting at 950,000 in from E&D. Last year, you remember, it was 750. That all makes a difference for how we end up at that 3 to 4%. So right now, for me, the big thing is to try to get us to the 4, and then we'll see what we can whittle under there. I mean, I heard as clearly as everybody else did 3. I understand that.
Well, just because they say it with conviction doesn't necessarily mean the town meeting's going to vote for that. But I just am.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that we at least be in the neighborhood when it comes time for the budget vote.
As the sort of the historian here, having 5 years of tenure on this committee, I want to point out to the new folks that this process that we've been going through since Brooke has been here is very, very different than the process that existed 6 years ago, I would say. And it was more like a reveal to the towns when we landed on our budget. And it was not the concerted effort and collaborative effort or recognition of what the town's limitations are. It was, here it is. And so this represents a huge, I think, improvement on the process, and we hear what the towns are saying, and we'll work it out. But we're not staying at. It would be very easy to say, okay, let's go to the mattresses and put this 6.8 out there. Has not been our approach
It
in the last
hasn't.
6 years.
And we've always said this is our working number right now.
Yeah.
When I was talking to, I'd mentioned to several of you earlier that I was talking to other superintendents yesterday, just the meeting that I was in. The 6.8 in that ballpark, it is kind of a general number where most people are landing at right now. Hopkinton, I believe, is going to be at 9 point something. So for us to be at the 6.8 is pretty normal to what other districts are experiencing as well right now. But to your point, in my time here, we have always been uber sensitive to the communities for exactly the reason I said at the beginning. We don't want to take a budget out there that is not going to be accepted by our communities. That would be foolhardy for us, because then it just sends us back and it sends us into a quagmire. No, we want to make sure we get somewhere that we know is going to be accepted, because otherwise what's the point?
Any other questions or comments for Brooke? Seeing none, I do want to note that we are 3.5 minutes ahead of schedule, so thank you, everyone, good job.
And because it's a workshop, you don't need to take a
No adjournment?
I don't? Okay. Even better.
Thank you.
All right.